This single virgin loser is Ryu, our protagonist. His life is a total disaster. First, he gets bullied and beaten up daily. And if that's not enough, his little brother one day got bullied so badly that they made his little brother blind with multiple fractures. And if this was not enough, their parents also died in a car accident. But wait, there is more. One day on Christmas Eve, a hot damn angel kidnapped 9 billion people from Earth and teleported them into a dungeon, giving them unique abilities. While others get abilities like super strength or mind control, Ryu ends up with a skill so trashy, it's almost laughable. Well, all his stats are below average, every single one of them. And his unique gift, when he dies, he goes back to the day of New Year's Eve to start all over again. Then, without any unique abilities and with trashy stats, he died countless times, got tortured, betrayed, you name it. Yet, Ryu grits his teeth and drags himself through the hellish floors, one after another, for years, alone, and finally, after what feels like a lifetime of suffering, he reaches the top floor. However, the journey takes a cruel turn. To proceed to the final level, one must be part of a team of 5. Ryu, ever the loner and still a virgin, doesn't meet the criteria. So once more he dies, this time on his 99th attempt. Yet as fate would have it, the clock resets. It's New Year's Eve, and Ryu finds himself back at the starting point with one last chance to change his destiny. Seeing his hand still trembling, Ryu can't shake off the memory of the unimaginable pain he just went through. He can't believe that he died because he was alone on the last floor. It was almost too much to bear. Frustration kicks in, clenching his fist and steeling his eyes. He gets ready to give it one more go, one final try. Ryu then yanks off his hoodie, throws it aside, and looks down at the ground. He's deep in thought, thinking about who he could possibly team up with this time around. So guys, today's like goal is 2,000 likes. Please like and subscribe to support the channel. Now let's continue. The scene suddenly shifts. Now the spotlight is on this piece of shit, Youngmin, the guy responsible for turning Ryu's life into a complete, living hell. Youngmin and his underlings are all smiles, giddy about the fact that they're about to turn into adults. No more sneaking around with fake IDs to buy alcohol. They're in a chatty mood, talking about the jobs they want in the future. When it's Youngmin's turn, his smile turns darker, more dominating. His buddies ask him what's on his mind for the future. Without missing a beat, Youngmin says he's going to be a gangster. Hearing this, his friends pause. They look concerned, almost freaked out. They tell Youngmin he must be nuts. One bad move in that world, and it's curtains for him. But Youngmin, always the unapologetic jerk, brushes it off. In his view, he's got just this one life to live, so why not live it doing what he enjoys? Beating people up. His friends manage a weak laugh, but on the inside, they're pissed off. They're silently labeling him a full-blown psycho. They're also thinking about ditching him for good once they're out of school. Then, to divert the conversation, one of Youngmin's friends asked about what he plans to do with Ryu, referring to him as his errand boy. Youngmin remembered Ryu as a gloomy loser, and with a sinister grin, said he obviously wouldn't let Ryu go. Even after graduating, he would continue to mess with Ryu until he got his fill of enjoyment. Then, one of his friends noticed someone and turned to call Youngmin's attention. He pointed out that he had found Ryu, Youngmin's errand boy. Seeing Ryu, Youngmin became excited, and the countdown for the New Year's Eve began with only 5 seconds remaining. But something unusual happened. A dark aura surrounded Ryu as he removed his hoodie and turned towards Youngmin with a cold, determined look, leaving Youngmin perplexed as he sensed that something was different about him. Youngmin's confusion turned into seething anger as Ryu glared at him. He clenched his fists, ready to beat the crap out of Ryu. However, his friend intervened, suggesting that they let it slide since it was the new year. Just as the bell rang to signal the arrival of the new year, a chilling voice echoed through the area, addressing all the humans as if they were insignificant creatures. This unexpected voice left Youngmin and his friends stunned, wondering where it had come from. From above the sky, the angel descended ever so slowly, dressed in a pristine white gown with enormous wings to match, one eye obscured by a piece of cloth. The angel looked down at the crowd with an amused smile. She commented that watching humans always felt like observing monkeys in a cage. Meanwhile, the crowd below was losing control, some thinking it was an event organized for the new year, while others were taken aback, finding it all too real, and some were already enamored by the angel's beauty, calling her hot and pretty. Ryu, on the other hand, glared up at her. Even though she looked hot, After seeing her for the 99th time, his anger still boiled within him. The angel let out a slight laugh, calling all the humans trash for falling for her beauty. She warned them not to have any naughty thoughts, as she had no intention of mingling with trash like them, and the people just listened to her in utter silence, shocked. With her hand resting on her chin and a look that seemed like she was contemplating something delicious, the angel said that since they all appeared stunned, it must mean they can see and hear her, and so her game should begin. At that moment, a drunken man yelled at the angel, cursing her, questioning her cosplay, and even calling her a bitch. Ryu, upon hearing, felt a sense of pity for the man. In the next instant, the angel's warm, inviting smile twisted into a horrifying, deathly glare. Her eyes glowed a menacing red. Her expression became scary, and with just a simple flick of her finger, the man's head popped like a bubble, splattering blood all around. The crowd, now truly horrified, erupted into chaos, scattering in every direction. Continuing with her terrifying aura, the angel pointed her finger at the crowd. She spoke in a chilling tone. "How dare a lowly human speak informally with my mighty self?" Then, as if switching a button, her aura returned to its previous kind state. She spoke politely but firmly, warning the crowd that they had no right to question her if they didn't want their heads to explode like that unfortunate man. Panic began to wash over the crowd like a tidal wave. She began to explain what they had to do and what this game was all about. Ryu, on the other hand, remained frustrated as he had to listen to her once again. With a warm smile and a kind aura, she extended her hand forward and stated that they would have to play a simple game. This game would consist of 20 rounds and would start on the 1st of every month. Their souls would be transported to another world, and after clearing each round, they could return to Earth. It sounded simple enough. Hearing this, the crowd was confused, thinking they could live just by playing a simple game. Even Youngman was a bit panicked. Then, the angel dropped another bombshell, saying, "Who said all humans will live? Even if they complete the quests, only half of the participants will survive." She then proudly declared how kind she was for sparing half of them, and Ryu just stared at her, not uttering a single word. Then, the angel let slip another piece of shocking information, that she wouldn't be taking all the humans. With a naughty smile, she explained that she would only take humans between the ages of 15 to 29. Upon hearing this, one man got incredibly happy, making strange faces and shouting that he was saved and wouldn't have to die. Another young man grabbed the old man's collar in frustration, and they began to fight. Panicked, Youngman stepped in to stop them, warning them to remember what happened to the guy who had shouted, his head popping like a bubble. The angel turned around and began counting. After some time, she declared that a total of 1.8 billion humans were present. With a warm smile, she flicked her fingers, and in the next moment, Ryu found himself in a room surrounded by nothing but whiteness. The angel started to explain that in this place, the participants could create a physical body exactly as they wanted, and their souls would be transferred into that body. Standing in front of a mirror, Ryu instantly created a character without much thought, using the body from his previous regression. He chose the nickname Black Scythe. A bright light covered his eyes, and in the next moment, a beautiful field appeared, filled with lush greenery, forests, and mountains. Ryu, with his badass character, magically appeared here with jet black hair and piercing red eyes. Clenching his fist, he mused how using this body so many times had made it feel almost like his real one. Slowly, other participants began to appear in the landscape. Their faces showed fear, panic, and in some cases, awe at their own transformation. Some had chosen appearances resembling famous movie stars or strikingly good-looking personas. Ryu looked at them and thought back to his own initial choices. He remembered that he too had first opted for a flashy, handsome appearance, but that had drawn too much attention, and because of that, he died pathetically. So now, he chose to keep it as simple as possible, avoiding unnecessary attention. Then Ryu's eyes shifted toward Youngman, that piece of work who always made life miserable for him. In this new world, Youngman looked pretty much like his real-world self, just taller and more muscular. He walked with a proud smile and eyes that sparkled. Ryu couldn't help but flash a grin mixed with sweat, noting that Youngman, true to form, had buffed up his character again. Then the angel congratulated everyone on crafting their desired bodies, mentioning how their fearful expressions delighted her. One man dared to ask, saying, "It doesn't seem like 1.8 billion people are here. Is there an error?" Hearing this laughingly, the angel replied, addressing humans as inferior, and she shouted, saying, Did she give them permission to speak? She stated that there were many angels taking care of small groups, and it was none of their business. She warned that if anyone spoke without her permission, she would pop their head like a bubble. Saying this, she started the quest. Then she commanded all the humans to say, "Status window," and as they did, a status window appeared in front of them. Just like always, Ryu's stats were trash, with his strength, intelligence, agility, and luck all at 3, without any normal or skill. The angel continued, saying, "Now that everyone has opened their status window and got familiar with this system, specially designed like a game for trash humans to understand easily," she gave an evil smile and extended her hand forward. She announced that if they increased their levels and cleared the 20 rounds, they would be granted a wish, and they could wish for anything they wanted. Hearing this, everyone, including young Min, got stunned. Then, with an amused smile, she announced that now she would give everyone their unique skill. In front of them, a crystal appeared, and when they broke the crystal, they got their unique skill. As young Min broke his crystal, he was shocked, and then the angel said, "Since all of them received their unique skill, let the game begin." With a flick of her finger, a notification appeared in front of everyone, instructing them to kill 100 goblins to survive this round. And just like that, a goblin appeared in front of them. The sight of the goblin approaching them with a dagger sent shivers down the participants' spines. Just when they thought things couldn't get worse, the angel had another surprise. Spreading her legs, spreading her hands wide, she summoned a whole army of goblins, amplifying the panic among the participants. The angel couldn't be happier, her mischievous smile reflecting her delight at the prospect of a life-or-death battle between 10,000 humans and 50,000 goblins. Suddenly, a goblin charged at the crowd. The tension was palpable. But then, to everyone's surprise, Ryu stepped forward, unarmed. As he advanced towards the charging goblin, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Everyone tried to warn him, claiming it was too dangerous. However, Ryu seemed to have a different plan in mind. With remarkable force, he delivered a powerful kick, sending the goblin flying backward and shocking the entire crowd. He changed his plans and decided to show his full power to the crowd, as it was part of his future plans. Picking up the goblin's dagger, Ryu fixed his gaze upon the angel, determined to capture her attention. Then, as 2 more goblins charged at him, Ryu got ready with his dagger. In a flash, both were slain. Again, all the people were shocked, saying how cool Ryu was. Then one person started to say that these goblins might be weak, and they too could easily kill them, believing it was not a big deal. But before he could finish their sentence, a goblin jumped at them, grinning, and stabbed them to death. Witnessing this, everyone panicked and started to run. Meanwhile, Ryu effortlessly continued to eliminate the goblins. As they witnessed the horrifying scene of goblins mercilessly killing humans, Ryu knew that now there would be only one thing on the minds of these people: survival. Some might try to run, but the area was protected by a barrier, so escape was impossible. Others might hesitate to kill a living being, but in order to survive, they had no choice but to fight or be killed. Ryu explained how he had once been like them, but after going through this round 99 times, despite being weak, he knew all the movements and weaknesses of the goblins like the back of his hand, making it easy for him to kill them. Watching the scene unfold from above, the angel was having a ball. She was genuinely enjoying the chaos of goblins and humans fighting each other. With a smirk, she commented on how the humans, who she referred to as monkeys, were struggling against the goblin. Even though the goblins had smaller, weaker bodies, when they were armed with daggers, they seemed to have the upper hand. However, her gaze eventually landed on Ryu, who was tearing through the goblins like a whirlwind. She took note of his nickname, Black Scythe, and realized he had already taken down 70 goblins in a short span. A hint of annoyance crossed her face. Ryu's dominance was ruining her entertainment. But, shrugging it off, she said to herself, it can't be helped, and shifted her focus to watch other humans fight for their lives. Ryu, on the other hand, continued his onslaught, becoming a one-man killing machine. The goblins started to fear him. Seizing the moment, Ryu checked his status window. He had leveled up to 4 and had 6 stat points to allocate. Without hesitation, he dumped all his points into agility, explaining that agility not only boosts dodging ability, but also impacts attack and movement speed. At the start, agility's the real MVP, Ryu thought. Looking at his dagger, Ryu said out loud, "This should get that pesky angel's attention." With a swift throw, his dagger found its mark, embedding itself in a goblin's head. With his arm still outstretched from the throw, he confidently declared his intent to wipe out all the goblins that day. The goblins shivered in fear, sensing the resolve in his voice. Ryu, not missing a beat, got back to work, and in no time, he had reached his goal. 100 goblins defeated. After successfully completing the quest, a bright yellow light enveloped Ryu, creating a protective shield that kept the goblins at bay. Standing there with a cool, collected expression, he remarked that the first round was a piece of cake. He'd gone all out, slicing through goblins like a maniac, just to grab that angel's attention. But truth be told, there was another reason too. Then, with a sly grin, Ryu shared that he was also aiming for a secret reward, the system. Impressed by his lightning-fast completion time of 10 minutes and 21 seconds, congratulated Ryu for achieving rank 1 in all the zones, setting a new historical record. Feeling pretty pleased with himself, Ryu explained that he had an ace up his sleeve. As a reward, the system granted Ryu a coupon, a real game changer. With it, he could choose any low-rank rare weapon he wanted, absolutely free. Ryu, still sporting a hand stained with goblin blood, eagerly clicked the coupon, and before him materialized an array of weapons. However, there was a tinge of disappointment in his eyes. You see, his trusty main weapon was a scythe, a rare find indeed. So, begrudgingly, he settled for a dagger, tossing aside the measly goblin dagger like it was trash. Meanwhile, the other players were still caught up in a life-and-death struggle. Ryu, though, was in a league of his own. He casually checked his status window, and there was a title that caught his eye, one he'd never encountered in his previous 99 lives, The Last Time Regressor. This was new to him, and he couldn't help but wonder what it meant. The scene shifted to a flashback, giving us a glimpse of how Ryu earned this new title. Ryu, maintaining his poker face, had utilized the Ryun Stone, causing it to slowly fade away as he revived his unique skill, Regression. However, the system promptly notified him that this marked the 100th time he'd used this skill, and it was now time to bid farewell to it. Now, this wasn't much of a shock to Ryu, who had anticipated that his skill would be removed after the 100th use. Otherwise, he might have regressed infinitely. However, there was a twist in the tale. Another system notification popped up, catching Ryu off guard. It informed him that this 100th regression had earned him a special title, The Last Time Regressor. This news left Ryu genuinely stunned. You see, in this world, titles were exceedingly rare, and each one came with its own set of skills and stat boosts. Intrigued, Ryu examined his new title and what it offered. Upon death, he would be resurrected with full health, and what's more, he could choose the exact location where he'd return to the land of the living. This, however, was a one-time use ability. At this revelation, Ryu broke into a smile. A genuine one. He rested his chin on his hand, realizing he'd just laid his hands on something truly extraordinary. After that, Ryu, feeling a bit restless, stretched out his arms. He was honestly getting bored and wondered how Youngman was faring. After a quick look around, he spotted Youngman. The dude was still kicking. Ryu smirked a bit, thinking, guess he's gonna make it through this mess like before. As time went on, more participants were finishing their quests. But the angel. She looked like she was about to doze off. She even said it was getting boring since there were now as many humans as there were goblin. Down on the ground, it was a completely different story. Humans were in a real mess. Some looked like they were on their last breath, while others were sobbing, holding their loved ones close. Then, out of the blue, that mischievous angel got a wicked idea. She decided to spice things up. As if things weren't bad enough, the terrified black-haired girl watched in horror as her injured hubby started to fade away, like he was just disappearing. And it wasn't just him. All the dead bodies began to vanish. Just as everyone was trying to wrap their heads around what was happening, a massive group of goblins appeared and rushed towards the humans, causing complete mayhem. From a distance, all you could see was a messy, brutal fight. Goblins and humans were going at it like there was no tomorrow. And up above, that angel was having the time of her life, laughing like a total maniac, and even had the nerve to say she was being generous by giving them 50,000 goblins for free. Ryu, on the other hand, was just chilling, sitting protected under his barrier. He didn't even flinch or show any emotion, even though things were getting pretty wild out there. After what felt like forever, a system message popped up. It announced that 5,134 folks managed to finish their quests, marking the end of the round. Then, just as suddenly as they appeared, all the goblins vanished. This left the remaining participants totally baffled. The angel then dropped the bombshell. Since half of the folks who first showed up had passed the quest, the rest weren't so lucky. And as she broke the news, the unlucky ones began to fade away. Their cries and pleas filled the air, but the angel, she didn't bat an eye. She just sat there, soaking in the drama like it was some top-notch entertainment. Then the system notification popped up, displaying everyone's rankings, and Ryu was at number 1. He received another reward for being in the top spot. which was 1,000 gold. Meanwhile, everyone stared at Ryu with shocked expressions as they also realized he was ranked number 1. The awaited moment had arrived. The angel took an interest in Ryu, just as he had hoped. Smiling, she praised Ryu, acknowledging that someone being ranked number 1 in the entire world, region, and under her group was an accomplishment to be proud of. The angel called out to Ryu, using his nickname Black Scythe, and asked him how he became so strong. She began to inquire if he had received a special unique skill, but stopped herself mid-sentence, cursing herself. Ryu replied, asking if she couldn't already tell what unique skill he had since she was an angel. The angel panikedly responded that of course she could, as she was a mighty angel, and she was merely asking. Ryu smiled inwardly, knowing that she couldn't actually discern his unique skill. Then Ryu dropped a bombshell, asking the angel for a favor. That wiped the smile off her face. You could hear a pin drop as everyone's jaws hit the floor. Ryu, bold as brass, said the rewards were a bit naff and he wanted something more. The crowd couldn't believe their ears. How could he talk to an angel like that? The angel, though, she was fit to burst. Rage was bubbling up inside her like a volcano ready to blow. In a voice that could curdle milk, she asked Ryu to spit it out. What did he want? Ryu, never losing his cool, said he wanted a better prize. The angel was seething, her eyes turning as dark as the abyss, a terrifying aura swirling around her, veins popping out like she was about to go supernova. Slowly, her hand reached out like she was going to squash Ryu's head like a grape, but she stopped herself mid-reach. She remembered she couldn't use her head-popping power again. Not yet. She had a 1 per day limit, and she had already used one before. In a sudden twist, the angel had an idea pop into her mind. With a cheeky smile, she told Ryu that she's got a reward Ryu will definitely like, and then she slowly came down on ground, saying normally she'd ignore such a bold request. But she's taken a liking towards Ryu, and she wanted to chat one-on-one in private, telling the rest of the humans stay for a moment as they will return soon. The angel and Ryu headed off toward the jungle, leaving the crowd with envy. They all thought, man, maybe we should have asked for better prize, too. But they quickly realized that only a top dog like Ryu could make a big ask without, getting his head blown up. As they dipped, Ryu shot a look back at Youngman, leaving the guy scratching his head. Ryu just gave a sly grin and continued on. As they ventured deeper into the jungle, the angel was like, "Why you hanging back? I ain't gonna bite. Walk up with me." And Ryu just nodded. Internally, the angel was losing it. She thought humans were mad greedy and she had some, let's say, special plans for Ryu. Her face turned all kinds of sinister and she let out a low, eerie laugh. She thought once they passed a certain rock, they'd be out of the surveillance zone. And then she'd get her revenge, giving Ryu a slow, painful end. As she reached the magic spot, she tried to put on her best smiley face, telling Ryu he was about to get his special reward. But out of nowhere, a fist zoomed toward her. Before she could even dodge, bam! Ryu's punch sent her flying and made this holy being a holy shit. The angel was in shock as golden blood spilled from her mouth. She couldn't wrap her head around the fact that she'd been punched by a mere human. Pissed off, she pulled herself together and tried to locate Ryu, but the dude had vanished. Just when she thought she'd caught a break, out of nowhere, Ryu popped up right behind her, ready to throw down. In a slick move, Ryu got one hand on her wing and the other wrapped around her neck. The angel, usually so in control, was freaking out big time. She screamed at him to back off, but Ryu, he just calmly ripped off one of her wings. The pain hit her hard, and she blacked out for a sec, and when she came back to sense, Ryu was already tearing off her other wing, and golden blood was going everywhere, and she couldn't help but scream out in agony. Ryu, cool as ice, told her to quit with the dramatic act. Then he forced her down to the ground, stepping on her back and grabbing her last wing. She begged and cried, but Ryu didn't show a lick of mercy. With one last yank, he ripped off her final wing while saying now she will not be able to run and they can talk in peace. Now the angel, trembling, slowly turned back, and Ryu asked her if she was in pain, but she didn't say anything, just ground her teeth. Then Ryu smiled and asked her if he hadn't acted like that. It would be him in her place crying in pain, and the angel would be the one smiling maniacally. Hearing this, the angel stood up, panicked, shouting, "What the hell is Ryu saying, this nonsense?" She called Ryu insane for hurting an innocent angel. But then, with cold eyes, Ryu picked up the angel's torn wing and showed her the hidden dagger hidden behind her wing. He asked her if she was not planning to kill him with this hidden dagger. Then what was it for? putting it into her pussy. Hearing this, the angel was speechless. Ryu stood up, throwing the wing aside, saying he had done this for the 88th time, and it was still satisfying to do it, while the angel was confused, not understanding what Ryu was saying. Then Ryu dropped yet another bomb. He called the angel by her name, Burial, and told her he knew all about her and it was time for her to die. Now, scared, anger and shock mixed on the angel's pale face as she wondered how Ryu knew her name. Thinking it was impossible, Ryu replied that there was no point in telling someone who was going to die and took out his dagger from his inventory, staring at it. The angel grew more and more panicked and started shouting that if Ryu killed her, the consequences would be heavy. Then, with an angry and loud voice, pointing her finger toward Ryu, she threatened him that if he didn't stop, she would use her skill and pop Ryu's head like a bubble. But Ryu calmly smiled and replied that she could do whatever she wanted, but she would not be able to use that skill, as it could only be used once per day. Now the angel was gritting her teeth in frustration, and then in panic, she warned Ryu that if he killed her, her comrades would not let him go unscathed. But Ryu, with a calm and calculating expression, simply said, "Comrades, my ass." He knew she was a virgin loser with no friends, and no one was going to come to her aid. The other angels didn't care about what happened to their fellow angel. Ryu slowly advanced toward the angel, and she began to utter threats about how he would regret killing her. But before she could finish her sentence, Ryu raised his dagger and thrust it into her chest with great force, ripping her apart. Golden blood splattered all around her, and she screamed in agony. However, Ryu's expression remained cold and calm as he stood over her lifeless form. The system then notified Ryu that he had achieved an unbelievable feat. He had become the first in history to kill an angel. As a reward for this act, he received 2 rewards. First, he obtained the angel's special essence, her juice, and second, he acquired an ability ruin crystal. This was the entire reason he had killed the angel, and he had succeeded in his goal. The ruin was known as the Ruin of Slaughter, and Ryu wasted no time in utilizing it. As he activated the ruin, it began merging with him, and the system promptly notified him that he had gained a unique skill known as the Butcherer. With this skill, every time he killed his target, all of his stats would increase by 1%, making him even more formidable. The system didn't stop there. It informed Ryu that he had earned the title of the First Angel Slayer. This title bestowed a tremendous advantage upon him, as when facing an angel in battle, all of his stats would double, turning him into a formidable adversary. Now, the most significant reward awaited Ryu as he held the angel's special juice in his hand. He explained that it was solely for this reason that he had taken the risk of killing the angel. This special juice, after consumption, would allow him to change his class to Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper class was considered the natural enemy of angels, making Ryu a formidable opponent against them, as angels will be a pain in the ass in future. Ryu went on to clarify that in this world, anyone could obtain a class, but the process for achieving one was shrouded in mystery. People gradually discovered the criteria through trial and error. For example, one could acquire a warrior class by defeating a certain number of goblins within a specific time frame. There were a total of 30 classes available, but some were unique and could only be obtained by fulfilling special conditions, such as drinking an angel's special essence. These unique classes were significantly more powerful than the standard one. Ryu had explored all the classes in his previous 99 lives and found that the Grim Reaper class was the best choice, enabling him to fight angels on equal footing in future. Ryu wasted no time in claiming his rewards for coming in first place in the entire region. He carefully selected a 3x experience buff for 2 rounds, fully aware of its importance. He already possessed valuable information and a good amount of gold, but he needed to level up quickly for his future plans. As Ryu made his choices, the angel's presence began to fade, and a soothing white light enveloped the entire area. The scene then shifted, and we found ourselves back on Earth with Youngman. He was panting and bewildered, slowly raising his head as he wondered if everything that had transpired was merely a bad dream. However, Youngman noticed something odd. He checked his phone and discovered that exactly 5 hours and 20 minutes had passed. Precisely the same amount of time as in his dream. Gradually, others around him began to wake up with headaches. Youngman's friend also woke up, confused, and shared that he had experienced a strange dream. But Youngman observed something even more alarming. As he pushed his friend's foot gently, there was no response. Another friend tried to rouse the motionless man, only to discover that he was dead, his face pallid. Panic began to grip them as they realized that everything that had occurred in the dream was not a mere fantasy. It was a grim reality. Anyone who had died in that dream had met the same fate in real life. This shocking revelation was too much to bear, and fear overcame them. Youngman and his friends frantically assessed their surroundings, trying to determine what to do next and how they would face the challenges of the upcoming month. Amidst the fear and confusion, Youngman was trembling, but his tremors were not born of fear. Instead, he was shaking with excitement, a strange anticipation stirring within him. He was getting excited, thinking that in that world everyone was equal, and it didn't matter whether they were a president or a celebrity. In that world, strength was king, and he could do whatever he wanted. He could kill whoever he pleased. Meanwhile, his friends were crying in panic, scared that next month he would die as a virgin if he failed to complete the quest. But Youngman scolded them, telling them he wasn't the only one facing this problem. He urged them to stay calm and explained that all they had to do was kill some monsters to survive the next round. It was as easy as spreading butter on bread. Hearing this, his friends couldn't believe what they were hearing and thought Youngman was crazy to begin with. But now he seemed even crazy. One of them sighed and called him a bastard, saying that with his miserable life, he wouldn't be missed if he died right now. After all, he had tons of things he wanted to do. Youngman paid little attention to their words. He was scanning the crowd. His friends asked him what he was looking for, and it turned out he was searching for his personal punching bag, Ryu. He wondered where that little rascal had gone. He had definitely seen him heading in that direction before he passed out. Could it be that he couldn't even make it past the first round and died there? But still, not finding him, he calmly shrugged his shoulders. It made sense to him that a loser like him didn't survive, and most likely had died. Suddenly, something in the crowd caught his attention. He saw a man in medieval armor. Young men couldn't understand who this guy was and where he managed to dig up this outdated armor. But then he realized it could only mean one thing. The status windows were working here as well. As soon as he gave the right command, his status window with his characteristics appeared in front of him. He couldn't believe that it had worked. Young men immediately shouted to his friends to all try to turn on their status windows because it worked here too. They were once again shocked that it worked. Seeing their actions, the others also followed suit. But everyone was curious if this meant that they could use all of their stats and items here. A few hours late, to test this, Young Min picked up a small pebble from the ground and squeezed it in his hand. It shattered into small pieces, and the remnants of the stone turned into a saw blade that spilled out through his fingers. Seeing this, he let out an evil smile. A few hours later, the next breaking news was announced on morning news nationwide. Multiple angels were seen worldwide, and 9 billion people died overnight, while another 9 billion people gained mysterious powers, turning the whole world upside down. Ryu Min walked down the street with a serious face, reading the news on his smartphone. He thought to himself, it's just the beginning. The real chaos is about to come. The real problem was now on round 1. People didn't become that strong. They reached just the level of a pro athlete. The real chaos would begin from round 2, when they would get magical powers, giving rise to numerous criminal activities as modern weapons wouldn't work on them. Ryu wasn't going to sit back and watch the world descend into chaos. If he had left things as they were, the Earth would likely have fallen into ruins before the 20th round arrived. There was only one solution. He would have to control the other players by overpowering them, making them his slaves. With a serious expression, he realized that he needed to gather his 5 teammates as soon as possible, and he had some of them in mind. But then he said to himself, that's not important now. There's something even more important to do. He left with determination. He reached his house and knocked on the door of the apartment building in one of Seoul's neighborhood. No one answered or opened the door, so he retrieved the key from its hiding place and let himself in. It was dark inside, and he noticed an uneaten instant cup noodle. Slowly he approached his bedroom. There, his little brother, Wani, slept peacefully and carefree on the floor. Seeing him, Ryu couldn't help but let out a warm smile. He was glad that his younger brother was safe and sleeping peacefully. He continued to watch over his sleeping brother with affection for a while. Ryu explained that his younger brother's name was Wani, and he was in his 3rd year of middle school. With a sad tone, he continued, saying their family had once been quite ordinary and happy, but after their parents died in a car accident, a lot of things changed quickly for them. One of the most drastic changes that happened was that Ryu became his little brother's only family and guardian. As Ryu examined his little brother, he noticed a band-aid coming off his hand and some bruises on his shoulders, as if someone had beaten him up. Gently, Ryu glued the band-aid back on and just stared at his brother, lost in thought. Morning came, and Ryu woke his little brother up, informing him that it was morning and time to wake up. Wani, still sleepy, slowly woke up and questioned why he was being awakened so early, especially when he had no classes today. Ryu, seeing how lazy his little brother was, pulled the blanket off him, startling him and waking him up in shock. Ryu explained that they didn't have time to sleep, and that he would explain everything later. For now, Ryu instructed him to hurry and dress up as they had to go somewhere urgently, his face still serious. Wani took his time, not fully understanding what was happening. He yawned and asked where they were going, but Ryu, with a serious expression, told him that they didn't have time to relax and the whole world was in chaos. Wani asked if something was wrong with the New Year ceremony he was going to attend, but Ryu urged him to get out of the house first, promising to explain everything later. As they left the house and strolled down the narrow street, Wani couldn't help but notice a significant shift in his brother's demeanor. Ryu, typically carefree and easygoing, appeared unusually serious. Wani sensed that something out of the ordinary had occurred, but he hesitated to inquire, thinking that Ryu would eventually share what was on his mind. Then Ryu turned toward his little brother and inquired if he was aware of what was happening in the world. Hearing this, Wani got confused, thinking about what could have happened while he was asleep in his state of panic. Ryu urged his little brother to check the latest news on his smartphone search feed. Wani quickly scrolled through the updates, trying to comprehend the gravity of the situation. What he read left him in disbelief. Stories of angels kidnapping people's souls and transporting them to another world, where half of them had died with a heart attack mysteriously. Panic surged through Wani as he absorbed the shocking news. In his state of anxiety, he bombarded Ryu with questions, asking, did Ryu also get transported to that world? His brother told him that he had been taken too, and he could only get out after killing 100 monsters called goblins. Hearing this, Wani immediately began to worry about his brother's health and asked if he was hurt. He bombarded Ryu with questions, but Ryu reassured him not to worry about himself. However, upon hearing this, Wani became even more concerned. After all, Ryu was his only family, his only sibling, and dearest person. Ryu was his entire world, and the thought of something happening to his brother was unbearable. To fulfill both the mother's and father's duty, Ryu became the most mentally strong individual from a very young age. But having a strong mind and killing 100 monsters are completely different things. Seeing his worried little brother, Ryu smiled and told him not to worry too much. He reassured Wani that he would explain everything later, but for now, they didn't have much time, and they needed to take action. Then Wani stopped and asked Ryu to tell him where they were going. He was willing to follow Ryu, but all the information was too much for him to handle, and he would only follow Ryu when he told him where they were going. Seeing his little brother's wounded hand, Ryu turned to Wani and told him in a cold voice that they were going to attack the hideout of Taegyu, who was the leader of the bullies in his class, shocking his little brother. Still not believing that his brother had found out, Wani asked his brother if he really knew about it. Ryu asked back, did you really think I wouldn't find out? Now Wani bit his lip, realizing that he thought he had hidden his secret well, but it turned out that his brother had known about the bullying all along. Now worried, Wani sat there thinking how he didn't want to get his brother involved in his life when Ryu was himself getting bullied and having a hard time. Ryu, on the other hand, seeing his little brother sad, apologized to him in his thoughts and said to himself that he shouldn't have known this in the first place, but he found this out during the first regression. After returning from the first round, Ryu Min just slept the entire day in depression, and his little brother went somewhere in the morning. After a while, Ryu was awakened by the ringing of the phone. Annoyed at who might be calling him, he reached for the phone, still sleepy. He asked who was calling, to which the voice immediately asked if he was the guardian of someone named Wani. Then it immediately added that he should come to the hospital immediately. After saying that, Ryu's pupils dilated in horror. The next second, he quickly got dressed and ran out of the apartment. And that day, his little brother got bullied so badly by Taegyu that Wani became blind with multiple fractures. Looking at his younger brother, who was sitting in the corner of his room with his arms wrapped around his knees, depressed, Ryu was shocked and angry with himself because he was so weak and pathetic that he couldn't even protect his little brother. And now that he is no longer that weak, pathetic loser, he will do anything to protect his little brother. And his first mission is to beat the crap out of that son of a bully. Then the scene shifts, and we see an old factory. And inside that, Taegyu was beating someone furiously, asking why they hadn't brought him 200,000 won each as he had ordered them to. Shivering in pain and agony, the man tried to say something, but only managed to squeeze out another painful groan. Taegyu took that as ignoring him, which made him even angrier. He lifted his foot and swung it at the poor guy with anger in his eyes. Then he began to beat the poor guy again with anger, who had no chance to resist, and it would have made things worse because his assailant was not alone. Taegyu's friends stood aside watching this one-sided beating with a chuckle, but they were actually tense and afraid of Taegyu's ruthless attitude since he was very unpredictable and very cruel. Even the other high school students were afraid of him. Taegyu was 185 centimeters tall, and he had a rather large physique for a sophomore high school student. Undoubtedly, he was an overwhelming dominant among his peers and was famous even among gangsters for his fighting skill. After a while, the man was finally done with the beating, screaming harshly. He scratched his neck and headed towards his buddies, complaining irritably that he couldn't buy a motorcycle today, as he couldn't get the money he was going to get today. Seeing the angry guy approaching them, the group of his buddies immediately tensed up. Unfortunately for them, their fears were realized as Taegyu approached his gang and asked if any of them knew anyone from whom he could get the money to buy the motorcycle. The gang was caught off guard, and each of them scratched the back of their heads nervously. Then one of his members suddenly remembered a name, and he turned to Taegyu and asked why they shouldn't call that tall guy with curly hair who was from their class. Taegyu's lips curled into an evil grin when he realized who he was talking about. Then he added that he planned to call him today anyway, since he thought he deserved a good beating as a New Year's present. They were thinking about how they would beat Ryu 1. Taegyu, with an annoyed face, said that Ryu 1 is basically homeless, and they will not get anything from him. Then he decided that once he comes, he will beat the crap out of him and make him blind for being so poor. Then suddenly, a footstep echoed in the empty factory, and in the entrance, Ryu confidently entered the building, while Wani hesitantly followed behind him. Seeing Wani, the hooligans started laughing, saying they were just going to call him. And here he is. He came on his own. Then, noticing another person beside Wani, standing confidently, Taegyu got annoyed, thinking who he is. Then he shouted loudly, cursing Wani, saying how dare he bring someone without his permission. But Ryu just stood there silently, glaring at them, and Wani started to shiver in fear. Seeing this silent treatment, Taegyu got even more annoyed. Then he angrily, slowly came toward Wani and asked him if he brought another errand boy. But before he could say anything, Ryu stepped forward with a smile on his face and confidently stated that he was his older brother. Taegyu laughed, then turned to Wani, who was standing behind his older brother, and reminded him that he had already told him to watch his language if he didn't want to get beaten up. And now he had come with his older brother to his hideout to get revenge with a mocking smirk on his face. Taegyu clenched his fists and told Wani that he and his brother would die today. Then, turning to one of his minions, he nodded and ordered them to act. The latter, not realizing what he was getting into, nodded in agreement with a happy smile. While Taegyu was standing behind with his arms crossed, his underling slowly walked toward Ryu and started taunting Wani, asking if his brother had ever even killed an ant before. Now, standing face to face with Ryu Min, he compared his height with Ryu, saying how small he was, and how Ryu Min was even smaller than Ryu Wan. But before he could finish his sentence, a heavy fist came flying toward him, and the next thing he knew, he was lying on the ground, blood coming from his face and mouth. Seeing his friend's defeat, the other guy immediately rushed at Ryu, intending to strike him with his fist. However, Ryu Min dodged his attack and struck him in the jaw with his fist. The blow was so strong that the guy let out a painful scream and flew a few meters away, hitting some debris behind him. At the same time, the first guy, who had already recovered from the blow, as well as the remaining bald guy who was shouting angrily for him to die, rushed at Ryu again. However, this joint attack was of no use at all, as all they got was 2 blows to their faces and started crying in pain. At the same time, Taegyu was watching his buddies being beaten up and crawling on the floor with painful groan. Then he walked past the fallen members, came close to Ryu, and with a smirking smile asked Ryu that he must have been acting this confident because he must have some boxing training from somewhere. But it's not enough to defeat him, as, however skilled Ryu is, he will not be able to overcome the difference in weight class. Taegyu was 185 centimeters tall and had a sturdy build, while Ryu Min was 165 centimeters tall and looked frail. The difference in weight classes was obvious, and one could easily predict the outcome of the fight between the two without even watching it. However, to Taegyu's surprise, Ryu didn't look scared at all. With a smile on his face, he turned to the big man and asked him if he was not watching the news. Hearing this nonsense, Taegyu charged toward Ryu with his punch, but to his surprise, Ryu dodged it effortlessly. Then Taegyu threw punches and kicks after kicks, but Ryu dodged all of them effortlessly. Now his vision was getting blurry, and he was breathing heavily, wondering in anger why he couldn't land a single hit on Ryu while grinding his teeth. At the same time, Ryu's fist lit up with a blue aura. Then he turned to Taegyu and said that if he had been watching the news, he would have known that attacking a player like him so easily was tantamount to suicide. The next moment he threw a lightning-fast punch that hit Taegyu's jaw, sending him backward, but it wasn't enough to defeat him. Taegyu once again rushed to attack Ryu with a fierce shout of curses. However, to his surprise and confusion, his blow did not hit the target as Ryu suddenly vanished. Unable to believe what was happening, he tried to turn around with horror on his face. Before he could react, Ryu threw another punch at Taegyu's face. With a painful groan, Taegyu rubbed his nose, and then blood started to come from his mouth and nose with a broken tooth. Seeing his broken teeth, he screamed loudly in anger, declaring that today he would kill Ryu. It would not be a peaceful death. He intended to torture him before delivering the final blow. With determination, he once again threw a punch toward Ryu Min, but this time Ryu didn't dodge the attack. Instead, he grabbed Taegyu's hand, leaving Taegyu in shock. Ryu Min started throwing a barrage of punches toward Taegyu, and from behind, Taegyu's underlings were left surprised. Taegyu noticed that Ryu was only punching his face, trying to humiliate him in front of his gang. This realization fueled his anger, and he charged toward Ryu again. But this time, Ryu kicked Taegyu with great force. Taegyu went flying and crashed onto the wall. The kick was so strong that Taegyu was holding his neck, struggling to breathe. With broken teeth, shivering from pain, and saliva coming from his mouth, Ryu slowly walked toward Taegyu, and with a cold stare asked, "Does it hurt a lot?" Ryu was consumed by anger because during his earlier regressions when he was weak, he had seen his little brother getting bullied and brutally beaten numerous times. Those memories haunted him, and he couldn't forget them. As Ryu slowly approached Taegyu, he was terrified, fumbling to say not to come close. Taegyu was still holding his neck and begged Ryu not to beat him more, saying he was sorry. However, Ryu didn't continue the physical assault. Instead, with a warm smile on his face, he gently held Taegyu's hands and asked, "Will you marry me?" He continued, stating that Taegyu shouldn't have messed with his brother. With a snap, a crackling sound echoed in the factory, and Taegyu started screaming in agony. Ryu had broken all of his fingers, and Taegyu was in excruciating pain, clutching his hand. But the torment didn't end there. Ryu grabbed Taegyu's other hand, leaving Taegyu in terror. With another snap, he broke Taegyu's other 5 fingers, and Taegyu started to scream maniacally. Witnessing this merciless scene, all of Taegyu's underlings ran away in terror, and even Wani, who had been watching, found it too horrifying to bear. With a serious expression, Ryu warned Taegyu not to touch a single hair on Wani's head. Taegyu, crying, promised that he would never do that, but then Ryu began to smile with a very happy expression. He grabbed Taegyu again, stating that Taegyu might change his mind in the future, so he had to ensure Taegyu would never mess with them. With that, he broke Taegyu's wrists as well, and Taegyu screamed in agony for hours. The scene shifted, and we see Ryu walking, his little brother hesitantly calling his name. Ryu stopped, and Wani asked in surprise how Ryu did that, and if he had learned some kind of martial art in another world. Hearing this, Ryu smiled slightly and replied that just like the news said, players could use their abilities in the real world. As an example, he pointed to his hand, which shone with a bright golden light. In the next moment, a black dagger appeared in his hand, causing Wani to gasp in surprise. Seeing the dagger magically appear in Ryu's hand, Wani got very excited and curiously, with sparkling eyes, asked how Ryu did that. Ryu, with a kind smile, replied that this is one of the skills he got from the other world, and all the other players can use it. Then, as Ryu was putting the dagger back into his inventory, Wani remembered what had happened at the factory and asked in the same surprised voice if Ryu had learned all his new fighting techniques from that other world as well. Ryu replied that he didn't learn any fighting techniques, and he was able to do that because he was faster than them. His dexterity stat had reached level 11, adding that normal people's agility stats were around 3 points, while professional athletes could reach 10 points. And his was 11. So now he was as fast as Usain Bolt. Wani followed his brother and asked what would happen if he level up, and Ryu replied that he didn't know, as he hadn't reached that level, and only by leveling up would he be able to find that answer. But from inside, he knew the answer. You see, in his 13th life, he told everything about him to his little brother that would happen in the future, and that he was a regressor. Because of that, Wani became the target of the other players and had been kidnapped by a player. Even though he was able to get revenge, he didn't want to feel those emotions again, much less have his younger brother suffer for it. Turning to look at his little brother who was following him, he told himself that he had to prepare himself to protect him in the upcoming fight between the players. Then Wani's stomach growled, and Ryu asked if he was hungry and suggested they go eat a good breakfast together. Hearing this, Wani happily nodded with shining eyes. Then the two brothers entered the nearest store. Ryu immediately headed towards the ATM. When Wani saw this, he asked where he was going, saying that the noodles were in a different place. But Ryu turned around and told him to wait for a few minutes. He went to the ATM and inserted his card. He looked at the screen and thought to himself that this was all he could save up to that point. His balance was 133,134 won, which was about $100. After selecting a transaction amount of 100,000 won, he pressed the button to confirm the transaction. Seeing the huge bills in his older brother's hands, Wani was surprised and asked why he needed so much money, to which Ryu replied that he needed it for something. Then the two reached an area selling premium foods, and Ryu asked Wani why he didn't choose something from here. Hearing this, Wani got startled, saying everything here is very expensive. Even the cheapest food here is for $20. But Ryu reassured his little brother that it's okay as it's New Year, and they should eat good food to enjoy the day. Hesitantly, Wani asked if they spend money on expensive food, will they have enough money for living expenses? Ryu replied with a smile not to worry about money, and just to buy as he has a way to earn a lot of money. Then, Wani excitedly picked up a packet of pork belly meat, saying he always wanted to taste this, and today finally he will be able to. Ryu from afar was watching his little happy brother with a warm smile. Then, Ryu approached Wani, who was shining with happiness, and suggested that they go to a restaurant together sometime and order some roast beef. But Wani smiled the happiest smile Ryu had ever seen, and replied that there was no need, as he had more than enough of what they had bought today. Seeing how happy his brother was, Ryu told himself to wait for only 5 days, after which he could give his little adorable brother as much food as he wanted. He will give his little brother so much meat that he will get tired of eating it. Then the scene shifts, and we see Wani took a piece of meat with his chopsticks and put it on a spoonful of rice. As he took a bite and chewed it, he happily said with a happy face that it was delicious, really delicious. Ryu was really happy seeing his little brother happy. Then suddenly, Ryu stood up from his seat and told Wani to wait here as he had a very important thing to do. Wani asked him where he was going, but Ryu told Wani that he will know in a second. Then Ryu returned after a while, and he loudly slammed his hand on the table, placing his pen on it. Confused, Wani then noticed many lottery tickets and asked Ryu in an uncertain voice if all these are lottery tickets. Ryu replied, yes, they are. As he was opening his pen's cap, Wani, with a worried voice, asked how many tickets Ryu bought, and Ryu replied, 20. Hearing this, Wani got panicked, realizing his big bro just spent his entire savings on some lottery tickets, and he asked Ryu in concern how he could do that, and if this was the way of earning money Ryu was talking about, as he should know that it was almost impossible to win them. However, his older brother calmly told him to trust him and just watch. Then he took a pen and began to circle the numbers on the lottery tickets. Wani was puzzled when he saw Ryu circling numbers on all the lottery tickets. Worried, Wani asked Ryu why did he circle the numbers on each ticket, and Ryu replied with a smile on his face that he did it because those numbers were the winning ones. Then the scene shifts, and we see the brothers sitting in their house with lottery tickets on the table. Ryu was calmly flipping through his phone, while his brother nervously held the phone in one hand and propped his head up with the other. The announcement of the lottery draw was made from his phone. Wani was biting his fingernails with worry, staring at the screen of his phone with the live broadcast. He thought they were in trouble if they didn't win a single lottery because they had wasted all their money. As the live broadcast began, Wani became more nervous and Ryu scolded him not to be so nervous and to stop biting his nails. Wani said that they would have been better off buying better food with that much money. Then the hosts announced that the first lucky number was 3, and Wani stopped biting his nails. The second number was 18, and the third was 9. Wani was shocked as he saw the numbers matching the numbers on the lottery ticket that Ryu had bought. As all the numbers got revealed, Ryu matched the numbers on the lottery ticket with the phone screen. He was overwhelmed with emotion, looking from the phone to the ticket and back again. With happiness, he asked Ryu if this was all a dream. Ryu replied it's not a dream and told Wani that he told him he had a way to earn money. Realizing it's not a dream, Wani raised his hand high, holding the lottery ticket, and happily shouted that they won the first prize. Ryu then told Wani to stop shouting, as if the neighbors heard them, they might get into trouble, and Wani stopped shouting midway. Then Ryu warmly asked Wani if he's happy, and Wani replied of course he is happy, and asked Ryu if he's not happy. Ryu with a smile replied that he is, but he was not looking excited at all. He explained that he was also like Wani when he first won the lottery in his 15th regression, but after repeating it for multiple times, it became more like a mandatory process or an annual event. Then Ryu said to himself that he has to earn money quickly, as after the death of 9 billion people, and the item trading among the players will crash the economy like crazy. But it was not the end of the surprise. Ryu won first prize for all the 20 tickets. Now holding all 20 winning tickets, Wani was in shock, asking Ryu that this still doesn't feel real, and how much is the total amount will be. Ryu replied he doesn't know, but then with a smile, he said the amount is so large that it will shake the entire world. Ryu got off the bus and walked down the street. He soon saw a tall building in front of him. It was the main branch of MANHUA Bank where he was to receive his prize. Normally, he would have been nervous before entering, but maybe it's because this is the 85th time he is receiving the grand prize. He is not nervous at all. The bank was crowded with customers, but none of them were lottery winners. Ryu went to the front desk in the lobby of the new building, and then he approached the employee on duty, telling him he is here to collect his lottery winning amount for the first place. Hearing this, the employee smiled and congratulated him on his winnings. At the same time, he wondered to himself how the guy standing in front of him, who looked like a student, was able to get the prize for the first place. Pushing his thoughts away and searching for something on the computer, then the employee asked Ryu where he had purchased his ticket, to which he replied that it was at the Yeonwi branch. Hearing the guy's words, the employee exclaimed in shock, unable to believe what he had said. His mind immediately went back to a conversation with his colleague who told him that this time, someone won the first prize for 115 games and all first prize. However, and his senior strictly commanded him whenever that customer will come, he has to treat him like a VIP guest. The employee's thoughts were interrupted by the voice of Ryu, asking him if he is okay, and the employee panickedly replied he is, and told Ryu to just wait for a minute. A few minutes later, a middle-aged man appeared in front of Ryu, who smiled and thanked him for waiting. After shaking hands with Ryu, he introduced himself as Guan Juno, saying that he was the president of the bank. Ryu simply replied that his name was Ryu. The president said that since he had won the first place prize, he had to congratulate him personally. Ryu smilingly thanked the man for congratulating him. Afterwards, the man offered to escort him to the place where he could collect his winnings, telling him to follow him. As they approached the door with a sign that read, "Lottery Ticket Sales Team," the president announced that they had arrived at the place. As soon as they stepped inside, they were immediately greeted by one of the female employees who stood up and bowed to greet the president. Noticing some young man next to the president, she couldn't help but wonder who it could be, but she didn't have to speculate because the next moment, the president himself introduced the guy, saying that he was the first place winner and that he had come to collect his prize. Then he told them to make sure that their guest felt comfortable. Surprised to see the guy who was talking casually with the president, the woman could hardly believe that in front of her was a man who had won first place for 115 games. Having recovered from her excitement and doubts, she told herself that she should calm down and do her best to satisfy the customer. After greeting him, she invited Ryu to sit down with a smile on her face. He did so, sitting comfortably on the chair right in front of her. She then asked him if he would like a drink, but Ryu simply replied that he would not, adding that he would like to get right down to business and take his prize. After hearing Ryu's answer, the employee didn't take any more time and asked him to provide her with the tickets so she could confirm that he was the winner. Ryu immediately handed her a stack of winning tickets that he had brought with him. Looking through the tickets, the woman couldn't believe that he had bet everything on one combination. It could only mean one thing. Either the guy had decided to risk everything, or he could see the future. Having finished with the confirmation, the employee said that everything was in order and that he could take the prize for the first place. However, Ryu's next question about how much he would receive made the girl freeze, as even just naming such numbers was absurd. After a second of silence, she replied in a trembling voice that his prize is 22.5 billion won, which is equal to $16 million. After he received his prize, everything went pretty quickly. The first thing he did was start looking for a place to move to. That same night, he opened a stocks account because he had information from the future. He knew that the price of Bitcoin would increase by 500% next month, so he also planned to invest his money in it. After returning home, Ryu showed his younger brother pictures of their new house and asked him if he liked it. Wani happily replied that it was amazing, adding that he had never seen such a huge and beautiful house in person. But Wani was confused about one thing. He asked Ryu why he signed a rental agreement when they had enough money to buy a house. Ryu replied that he didn't have any more money, as he had spent it all. His phrase made Wani freeze in place, and Ryu casually added that he had invested all the money into Bitcoin. When his younger brother heard this, he froze in place again, unable to understand how his brother could so easily say that he had invested $15 billion into Bitcoin. Ryu Min approached his younger brother, who had turned into a statue, and patted him on the shoulder, assuring him that he hadn't done it without thinking, and he knew the price of Bitcoin was going to rise. He told Wani not to worry. Then, hugging Wani, he added that not to worry, as he had seen a dream, and in that dream, he saw new numbers of lottery tickets, and they could always earn money through the lottery. After his older brother's words, the eyes of the naive Wani shone with admiration, believing everything Ryu said. Realizing this, he immediately grabbed Ryu by the shoulders and began to shake him excitedly, asking him never to forget them. Ryu somehow broke free from his little brother's grip, thinking to himself that he couldn't forget them, even if he wanted to, after repeating it countless times. Then Ryu turned to his brother and suggested that they eat outside before heading out. Wani asked in confusion where they were going, and Ryu replied with a smile on his face that they were moving to their new house today. At the same time, at some unknown location, Young Min was punching and made a big hole in the wall, and then with a villainous smile. He said to himself that pumping all the points into strength was the right decision. Swinging his fist at the end wall again, he added to himself that he was even able to get a power rune that doubled his strength. As he continued to strike the wall, he started to laugh maniacally, saying that now with this powerful fist, no one will be able to stop him, and veins started to foam in his hand as he clenched his fist, ready to go another round of punching the wall. Then the scene shifted, and we see Youngmin now in front of Ryu's door, slamming the door and shouting Ryu's name. When he didn't get an answer, he said first he thought Ryu died in the first round, but later he found his name was not in the list of the dead people, and Ryu was even ignoring all his calls. Then Youngmin's face became furious, thinking the way Ryu glared at him before the angel kidnapped him. He can never forget them, and he will only get satisfaction when he will beat him to death with his own hands. Then Youngmin started to slam Ryu's door continuously, saying if he is hiding inside, he will now come inside after breaking the door. However, a voice stopped Youngmin, and it was an old man standing on the stairs who turned to him and asked him what he was doing at that door. Youngmin asked the old man if he should mind his own business, since Youngmin is not slamming the old man's door. Hearing this, the old man, adjusting his glasses, replied that he was indeed the owner of the house, startling Youngmin. Then he asked Youngmin again if he had come to meet a friend. For a second he froze, not knowing what to say. He quickly adjusted himself to the situation, smiled, and said that he had indeed come to see his friend. Then he asked the old man if he could open the door for him. Youngmin added that he had suddenly lost contact with his friend, and now he didn't know how to get in touch with him. Hearing this, the old man was shocked. Then he told Youngmin that it was now an empty apartment as the student who lived there had moved out. Hearing this, Youngmin immediately asked the owner of the house if he knew when and where the student had moved to. But the old man replied that he had moved today, but he didn't know where he had moved to. Hearing the old man's answer, Youngmin was furious, and he clenched his fists in anger, wondering how he could have left without telling anyone. Then the scene shifts, and we see the duo arriving at the huge glass building, which was the size of a skyscraper. Wani exclaimed in surprise and admiration, covering his eyes with his hand to keep the sun from shining. He said with shining eyes and amazement that the building was very tall. He was so innocent that he was even surprised that the door at the entrance was revolving. He didn't stop being amazed even when the female employee simply handed them entrance cards while his older brother confirmed their identities. Wani continued to be surprised that there was even a security guard here. Pushing himself up in the elevator to his room, he turned to Ryu and said admiringly that this place was really amazing. Stepping out of the elevator, they headed to their room. When they got to their room, Wani exclaimed again in surprise, wondering how big it was. His brother replied with a nonchalant face that it was about 330 square meters. Such a figure shocked his younger brother, as their previous apartment was dozens of times smaller. Looking at the apartment, Wani, still in disbelief that they were going to live here, asked, "Isn't it too big just for the two of them?" Ryu replied that they have a lot of money and that they should enjoy their life. Then Wani asked Ryu how much the rent had cost him, and Ryu said that it had cost about 22 million won a month, which is about $17,000 a month. The rent alone made his younger brother's head spin. He thought to himself that not so long ago, he was still concerned about the price of meat, which at that time seemed very expensive to him, and now they are spending so much just for rent. Following his older brother, who was still looking at the apartment they would be living in, Wani asked him if they could have chosen something cheaper. Hearing this, Ryu shook his head negatively and replied that the more expensive the services were, the higher the security, which was their priority after all. On the first of every month, all players will fall unconscious as their souls will get transported to another world, leaving their real bodies unprotected, and it was the period that was the most vulnerable for all players. During this time, they became vulnerable to disasters such as fire or earthquakes. But the biggest danger was not the cataclysms, but the assassins hired by other players. And so, when the time came, players would need to prepare to have their bodies in as protected a place as possible. After finishing his thoughts, Ryu turned to his brother, who had already settled in a bit, and asked if he liked the house. Wani enthusiastically replied that it was beautiful, and it still felt like he was dreaming. Then Ryu kindly said he is glad Wani is happy and that he liked it. Suddenly, Wani's face became a little sad. He then apologized to his older brother in an uncertain and worried voice. Ryu looked at him in confusion, not understanding what he was apologizing for. Wani continued in an upset voice, saying that Ryu would be transferred to another world next month and he'd have to fight for his life. Knowing this, how could Wani enjoy and be happy? But this sad atmosphere was broken by Ryu, who patted his brother on the shoulder, asking him why he was so sad. He added, "Do you think I won't be able to come back from the next round?" But Wani didn't say anything, and Ryu jokingly told him to stop thinking about nonsense and follow him. He had heard that the shopping hall on the second floor sells really delicious food, so they should go and enjoy. Wani agreed, still worried. Then suddenly a message arrived on Ryu's phone. After reading the message, he realized it was from Youngmin, and Ryu continued to ignore him. Putting his phone in his coat pocket, he thought of giving Youngmin a visit. The next day, a sleepy Ryu came out of the bedroom and was surprised to see Wani fully dressed, preparing to go somewhere. When he asked him where he was going, Wani happily replied that he had ordered some rice cakes and was going to pick them up. Still sleepy, Ryu didn't immediately realize what he was talking about. As far as he could remember, this had never happened before. Although regression did not guarantee that everything would happen exactly the same way as in the past, it was a significant change. Turning to his younger brother, who had already packed up and intended to go, Ryu asked him why he had decided to buy them, to which Wani replied that he was going to give them away to the neighbors as a gift to celebrate their moving in, as he thought it would be good manners. Ryu thoughtfully replied that being on good terms with the neighbors was a great idea. Pleased at his older brother's praise, Wani said that he could distribute them himself, adding that Ryu could stay here and rest. However, Ryu disagreed, replying that they should distribute the gifts together. He then told Wani to wait for a while he went to change his clothes. After a while, they rang the bell of the first apartment, from which a voice came out seconds later asking who it was. Wani, with a smile on his face and a cake in his hands, good-naturedly informed them that they were their neighbors who had just moved in and now came to greet them. Opening the door, a middle-aged woman with a smile also greeted them. Then noticing that the two looked very similar, she asked if they were brothers, to which Wani smilingly replied that they were. Handing the woman a rice cake, he advised her to eat them while they were still warm. She happily received the cake and thanked the brothers. Then, after some more time, They continued to greet their neighbors, continuing to give them gifts, and after an hour they were almost done with greeting the neighbors and heading to the last place. This was the top floor, and the most expensive and the most secure one. While Wani was ringing the doorbell, Ryu was thinking to himself that there must have been someone from a rich family or a celebrity in such a place. Even after ringing the bell for a while, no one answered his call, causing him to have thoughts that perhaps no one was home. Pressing once more and getting no answer, he turned to his older brother, who was standing by the wall, and said a bit confusedly that it looked like no one was here. Turning around, they were about to head for the elevator, but the sound of the doors opening made them turn around. The person they saw in the next moment shocked Wani, while Ryu, although a little surprised, didn't change his face much. In front of them was a girl who had a beautiful appearance and was dressed in elegant clothes, who was looking at them with incomprehension. This is the story of Ryu, the strongest hunter on Earth, who dies because he was a single virgin loser. In the previous episode, we saw how Ryu mercilessly drove his dagger inside the angel's body, giving her a brutal death and becoming the god of death. After returning to Earth, he got revenge on the ugly, fatzos who bullied his little brother by breaking every one of his bones and all 10 of his fingers. He then gave his little brother all the possible happiness, feeding him meat, buying a big house, and just when they were greeting their new neighbors, they met a beautiful, gorgeous woman named Ahrin, an actress. When Wani laid eyes on Ahrin, he was practically speechless, and a little shyness crept in. He couldn't help but blurt out how pretty she looked, like an angel come to life, while Ryu was just staring at her, thinking about that angel that he just killed without any reaction. But before either of them could get a word out, this dude dressed in black stepped right in front of Ahrin. He had a real rude tone, asking the brothers who they were, and he even threw in a snide comment about whether they were her fans. That really got under Ryu's skin and he got a bit annoyed. So with his arms crossed, he made it clear that they weren't fans and that they'd only just moved into the building today. Meanwhile, Wani was feeling a tad shy. Then Wani, all cheerful, tried to hand over a rice cake as a friendly gesture. But that bodyguard of Ahrin's wasn't having any of it. He rudely stopped Wani right in the middle of his offering and flat out said they didn't want anything. To top it off, he told the brothers to mind their own business and not bother them. With that, he just turned on his heel and walked away, casually mentioning that Ahrin ain't into sweet stuff. Left the brothers feeling pretty insulted, that's for sure. Next up, the bodyguard opened up the door to Ahrin's place and told her to head on inside. She followed his lead, but she couldn't help but shoot a sorry look back at the brothers. Today's goal is 3,000 likes. Like and subscribe to support the channel. Now let's continue. Now Ryu was getting pretty mad about the whole deal. He might not know who these people were, but that man's rude behavior was really getting on his nerves. On the other hand, Wani was still standing there, practically speechless. And it ain't just 'cause he was feeling insulted. It's 'cause he realized that the lady he'd been staring at was none other than his idol, Ahrin. His eyes lit up with happiness, and he couldn't believe he was seeing her in the flesh. While Ryu was confused, thinking who she was, being a single virgin and a shut-in, he didn't have much knowledge about famous people. Then Wani excitedly explained to Ryu that she was Ahrin, and Ryu asked in confusion, "Who is Ahrin?" Then the scene shifts, and we see Ahrin sitting on her sofa, watching the news on her phone. The news is filled with reports about how some famous actors mysteriously died overnight from heart attacks, and she recognizes that some of them were her friends. She feels a growing sense of terror as she wonders what is happening to the world. She places her phone on her bed, still filled with worry and a hint of fear, and starts thinking about how she barely survived this round, all because of her bodyguard. The thought of killing those damn goblins from her own hand is still terrifying her. To lighten the mood, she thinks jokingly that if she had died today, her name might have been in the news. Seeing Ahrin's worried expression, her bodyguard asks what's on her mind. She initially brushes it off, but the bodyguard sits beside her and gently encourages her to share her thoughts, assuring her that he's always here to listen. With a somber expression, Ahrin confesses that she's thinking about how drastically the world has changed and how she might die in the next round. Hearing this, the bodyguard reassures her, emphasizing that his job is to protect her, and she can rely on him. Ahrin smiles warmly in response and expresses genuine gratitude for his unwavering support. Ahrin goes on to explain that when the company first assigned her a bodyguard, she had assumed he was there merely to keep an eye on her. However, she acknowledges that without his presence, she might not have survived the first round. She shares a light-hearted moment with her bodyguard, mentioning that the new neighbors who brought rice cake looked yummy, but her bodyguard replied that she would get ugly and fat if she ate things like that. Aaron replied that it was okay to take the cake, and they would not have eaten it. The bodyguard was too rude to the brothers, as they might have felt bad and insulted. The bodyguard replied that he knows all about people like them. They were just trying to be friendly for their own selfish reason, and if they had taken the rice cake, they would have bothered them non-stop. But Aaron, remembering the faces of the brothers, Wani, an innocent boy, and Ryu, a Chad, and thought they didn't look like bad people to her. Then Aaron notices something about one of the two neighbors. One of them looks older, possibly above 15 years old, which means he must have killed 100 goblins to survive. The bodyguard replied that he must have, and that's why he is alive. Aaron again gets a little panicked, saying how amazing Ryu is. To think someone who has gone through such a cruel and hellish experience can look so calm. Hearing this, the bodyguard laughingly replied that killing 100 goblins was not that hard, and those who didn't kill them were just idiots. But Aaron knew inside that it was not easy to kill 100 goblins for normal people. The bodyguard did manage to do so, as he was a skilled fighter and received professional training. Then she started thinking about that guy named Black Scythe. In front of him, her bodyguard looked like a kid. Black Scythe was just too overpowered, and she almost felt bad for the goblin, seeing how brutally Black Scythe killed them. Then she started to think, who would Black Scythe be in real life, and how he looked like in real life? The scene shifts, and we see 1 month has passed, and it's January 31st. Ryu is now in his bed, and Wani is holding his big bro's hand worriedly, saying he has to promise him that he will come back alive no matter what. Ryu smilingly replied not to worry, as he is too strong to die, even if he wanted to, and not even a god can kill him. Hearing these words, Wani was still worried. Then Ryu patted Wani's head, saying not to worry too much and to eat once Ryu's soul gets transported to another world and sleep. When Wani wakes up from his sleep, Ryu will be there standing beside him. With that, Ryu's vision became blue, and he got transported again with the rest of the people. As all the remaining survivors made their way to the dungeon, they were hit with a wave of panic. Some let out screams of pure fear, while others just looked around, trying to wrap their heads around the place that looked more like a jungle than anything else. Then, one of the girls in the group spotted Ryu and called him out as the guy who ranked #1 in the last round. Ryu stood tall, soaking in the attention, and noticed whispers about him starting to spread, a good sign for the plans he had in mind. He wanted everyone to recognize who was running the show. Ryu's eyes briefly met Youngman's, but before he could dwell on that, a voice filled the area. Yep, it was another angel, and man, she was a looker. But this was a different one, and questions buzzed through the crowd about what happened to the last one. The new angel flashed a friendly smile and explained that the previous angel had gone missing for reasons unknown, and she was here to take over. Seeing her smile, the crowd's nerves started to calm. Maybe this angel wasn't going to be as much of a nightmare as the last one, they thought. But that hope was short-lived. Her smile twisted into something sinister, and with a hand delicately touching her lips, she let out a creepy laugh. She was stoked, ready for some fun after a long time. With a casual flick, she handed down the new quest. They had to pick a zone leader in 3 hours. Seeing this, everyone got confused, but then they noticed that all the people in this round can pass, unlike the previous round where half of them died. The angel noticed the confused looks on the players' faces and with a smile, decided to break down the quest for them. She explained that this round wasn't about fighting. Everyone could make it through just by picking a zone leader. The chosen leader would have the power to command anyone in their zone to do anything they wanted, from crawling on the ground to dropping dead. Isn't that an awesome skill? She asked, looking around at the player. As she laid out the details, a guy with green hair listened intently, and another dude, all muscles and a tattoo on his neck, seemed pretty annoyed. The angel wrapped up, saying that in 3 hours, she'd be back for the vote to decide the leader. The green-haired guy, a little shaky, raised his hand and asked if it was really that simple. Just vote for a leader, and they all get to live. The angel's grin went a bit wicked as she confirmed it. Just a vote, and then, bam, they'd all be back on Earth, safe and sound. Now, hearing this, everyone got happy and started to celebrate, saying this time no one is going to die. Ryu, from behind, remained with a serious face. Then the angel bid them good luck, and then she vanished, and the timer of 3 hours began. In the next moment, the remaining players were still happy, as no one will die today, except for Youngman. He was not. He was damn damn angry, and while grinding his teeth, he said he was ready to fight and kill some monsters. Seeing Youngman angry, his buddy panically said to him that just to let it go, as the angel will let them live if they just vote. So, why is Youngman complaining so much? Youngman, still angry, replied that he has used all his points to strengthen, and now he can't even beat the crap out of someone, and he is just too frustrated. Ryu watched Youngman from a distance, thinking to himself that in all his 99 lives, Youngman was always the same hothead. Ryu turned away, muttering that he'd sort out Youngman when the time was right. Then Ryu noticed everyone's discussion about whom to vote for and what to do, but Ryu said that is not important to him. Then, while walking toward the forest, he continued, saying he has an even more important thing to do, which is selecting a class, the class of a Grim Reaper, the god of death. And in order to do that, he has to reach level 10 in 3 hours. Just then, a goblin sporting a red hoodie appeared. Ryu's grip on his dagger tightened. He taunted the goblin, daring it to come closer. The goblin charged, and Ryu, with an emotionless face, cut through its neck as easily as a hot knife through butter. Then the system notified that he gained experience points with 15 gold, and all his stats increased by 1% because of the ruin of slaughter. Now, standing beside the fallen goblin, Ryu knew what he had to do. He had 3 hours to reach level 10 and choose his class. That was the only way his plan would work out. As another gang of goblins appeared, Ryu readied his dagger. He couldn't help but smile, seeing the goblins approach like a kid waiting for a slice of delicious cake. And the next moment, Ryu started the one-sided slaughter of the goblin. Then, after an hour of bullying the goblin, Ryu wiped the blood off his face and checked the time. 1 hour down. He muttered to himself and flicked open his status window. He was surprised to see he had hit level 9 and racked up 8 stat points already, way quicker than he'd expected. Without a second thought, he chucked all his points into agility, given his base stats were pretty much rubbish, and after living for 99 lives, his battle sense became so sharp that his body moves on its own during battle. To support his body, he needs agility. That's when Ryu noticed something and turned back with a serious look. Someone had been following him for a long time while he was caught up in the fight. Normally, he wouldn't bother with distractions since he was so focused on battling, but this was new. This hadn't happened in his lives, so he figured he better check it out. Then, with a serious look, pointing his bloody dagger toward the bush, Ryu said that he didn't know who they were, but now they had to show themselves. If they didn't come out, they better prepare for a painful death. As Ryu finished his sentence, a beautiful woman with messy brown hair panikedly came, both her arms raised up, saying she was here. Seeing her, Ryu realized she was none other than the actress he had met on the first floor, the one whose his little brother is a fan of, and Ryu started thinking why she was following him. Aaron was just about to apologize and explain why she was following Ryu when suddenly someone else jumped into the conversation. It was a familiar figure, and it turned out to be that rude bodyguard from before. He quickly chimed in, apologizing and making it clear they hadn't been tailing Ryu for any bad reasons. He just wanted Ryu to take it easy. Ryu caught a glimpse of the bodyguard's nickname, Sang-cheol, and his reaction was immediate. His eyes went wide as he recognized the name. Sang-cheol was the trusted right-hand man of Gyunrok, the eldest son of Korea's largest corporation, who is also known by the fearsome nickname Heavenly Demon. He is one of the people Ryu wants to recruit into his team, along with a priest who was rumored to have the power to bring the dead back to life. Ryu hadn't expected to bump into Gyunrok's right-hand man so soon, and it made him wonder why such a guy would be protecting Aaron. Then it hit him. The priest might just be this skinny, innocent-looking girl right in front of him. Keeping his cool, Ryu's voice dropped as he asked them straight up why they were following him. They admitted they had been on his trail since he first set foot in the forest. Aaron seemed a bit nervous as she explained, saying she had a proposition for him. With a hopeful smile, she said she wanted to team up with Ryu and asked if they could join forces. Hearing this, Ryu smiled and replied that joining forces means both parties are helping each other. Aaron shakily replied that it's true, and Ryu replied he doesn't see how they can be any help to him, so he doesn't want to join forces with them. With a rude tone, he continued that they should go and stop wasting his time with this nonsense and go back. With that, Ryu turned back, saying he doesn't have any desire to form a team, and started going deeper into the forest. Well, it was his way to get revenge from the bodyguard. Then, as Ryu left, the bodyguard was really annoyed, saying Ryu was really arrogant, but Aaron, she just collapsed to her knees, wiped out, mumbling about how Ryu's vibe was intense, like he could take a bite out of her at any second. Then she continued, saying she really wanted to be on the same team as Ryu from the first time she saw him fight, but it didn't work out well. The bodyguard, still annoyed, said he already told Aaron that strong people like him always have big egos, and they like to act alone, and they hate to work on a team. Now standing beside the goblin corpses, they thought about what to do in the remaining time before the vote, and they decided to hunt some goblins like Ryu to level up. Then, as they started to go deep inside the forest, we see someone following them from the bushes. Then the scene shifts, and we see Ryu mercilessly continuing to kill the goblins while the goblins try to run for their lives. After killing goblins for an hour, a group of gnolls approached Ryu, and seeing them, Ryu gave a big, bright smile, saying, "Looks like something delicious came on its own." Then, as the group of wolfmen attacked Ryu all at once, Ryu, with a single swing, slaughtered them like vegetables, and their torn body parts fell from the sky like rain. With that, Ryu finally reached level 10. The system notified Ryu that as he reached level 10, he could access the shop. Then, a hidden quest appeared, to change class before the voting began. If Ryu changed his class today, he would get a 50% discount on today's items in the shop. Ryu explained that everyone could choose what class they wanted after reaching level 10, but no one knew how to choose a class. For a warrior, one had to kill 30 monsters in under 1 hour, and one could become a berserker after battling monsters for 1 hour while constantly bleeding, and so on. And after continuously grinding for God knows how much time, Ryu gathered this knowledge. After that, Ryu held the angel's special juice in his hand. He started to absorb it, and a bright yellow light surrounded Ryu. The system notified Ryu that he had changed his class to Grim Reaper, and he got 3 unique abilities. First, when he is wielding a scythe, his attack increased by 2. Second, when he is fighting at night, his speed will increase by 50%. And lastly, at night, all his senses will increase greatly. But it was not enough, so the system gave Ryu a Grim Reaper scythe to change his class, making him the first in the entire world. Then the system notified Ryu that he had reached the apprentice rank from beginner rank. Ryu explained that there are 6 ranks in total, starting with beginner, then apprentice, then regular, then expert, then master, then grandmaster. And with each rank comes a unique skill related to the class. As Ryu reached the apprentice rank, he acquired the skill Seal of Death. Using this, he can cast a seal on a target and deal double the damage. After merging it with the 2x damage of his weapon, the Grim Reaper Scythe, he can inflict 4x damage. He also gained the skill Tracking, which enables him to find anyone's location as long as he remembers that person's face or nickname. Oh boy, I wish I had this skill to track my crush. Now fully equipped, the first person Ryu thought to use his skill on was Youngmin. He used his skill to track him, and the system notified him that Youngmin was 190 meters away, with an arrow indicating the direction. So Ryu started to follow the arrow with an amused smile. The scene changes, and we see a tired Aaron struggling to stay on her feet. She collapses to the ground, and when she tries to stand up, her whole body shakes. She's hurting bad and tells her bodyguard she can't run anymore. The bodyguard, who's hurt himself and freaking out, helps her to her feet. She's standing there saying the arrow wounds are killing her. The bodyguard, still scared, throws out a guess, saying maybe if they can just last this 1 hour without dying, their real bodies won't be hurt. But before Aaron can reply, they hear a voice that makes them freeze. It's Youngmin and his crew. Youngmin's grinning like he's got the upper hand, telling them they're not getting away today. The bodyguard looks like he's ready to give up, thinking he can't die over this damn woman. He gets his dagger ready though, because it looks like there's no choice left but to fight. Youngmin sees the dagger and calls the bodyguard an old man, asking if he really wants to go at it with them. He then points behind him, showing off how many buddies he's got, and asking the bodyguard if he's blind not to see them all. The bodyguard yells out, full of anger, wanting to know why Youngmin's doing this and what he's gonna get from it. Youngmin just smiles that creepy smile and says he's gonna get something really good, leaving them both shocked. Youngmin continues, saying that he will take the woman behind him. As he's not interested in men, he can leave, and he won't do anything to the bodyguard. Youngmin only wants that woman who looks like Aaron, the actress. Then, Youngmin's buddies, eyeing the woman who looks just like Aaron, didn't care whether she was the real deal or not. In this world, where they can feel pain, they figured they could also feel pleasure. So they wanted to have some fun with Aaron. Hearing this, Aaron was struck with fear. Then Youngmin tried to make a deal with the bodyguard, saying if he handed over Aaron, he could walk away without a scratch, and they'd return Aaron unharmed after they had their fun. That way everyone's happy, he said. The bodyguard was torn. If he'd known they were after Aaron from the get-go, he would have ditched her. and saved his own skin. He was in this for the money after all, and his life was worth more than any job. But the fear of the heavenly demon being angry if he failed his duty to protect her made up his mind. He squared up, ready to throw down. Seeing this, Youngman got a kick out of the old man gearing up for a fight. The bodyguard tried to reason, saying that what they were planning was a crime, but Youngman just laughed it off. "Who's gonna punish us?" he jeered. "No one knows what we really look like or who we are in real life." With their backs against the wall, the bodyguard and Aaron braced themselves, trying to figure out their next move. Then out of nowhere, someone else shows up. And it's none other than the god of death, Ryu, just chilling under a tree, watching the whole showdown unfold. Youngman saw Ryu, and panic flickered across his face, wondering what he was doing there. Then Ryu asked Aaron what they were doing there. But before they could answer, Youngman tried to tell Ryu, with his same attitude, to mind his own business. Ryu cut him off midway, asking, "Did I ask you?" The bodyguard hurriedly told Ryu everything, how Youngman attacked them, and that they wanted to have some fun with Aaron. Hearing this, Ryu glared at Youngman and asked if this was true. Youngman, with his rude attitude, replied that whether it's true or not, Ryu should just mind his own business. Ryu had had enough of Youngman's nonsense. With a deep voice, Ryu said whether it's his business or not is none of Youngman's business, and he should mind his own business. With that, he summoned his red, bloody scythe with a terrifying aura. Shocking. This is the story of Ryu, the strongest hunter on Earth, who dies because he was a single virgin loser. In the previous episode, we saw how, after entering the second round, Ryu started bullying the goblins, killing them like vegetables, and obtained the class Grim Reaper, the god of death, along with numerous other skills. Meanwhile, Aaron and his bodyguard were in deep trouble as Youngman and his crew surrounded them, wanting to have some fun with Aaron. Just then, Ryu appeared with his death scythe, and everyone got terrified because of the intense aura. Now, with one hand in his pocket and the other gripping his sizable scythe, emitting a bloody red aura, Ryu spoke in a deep voice. He made it clear that he wouldn't let Youngman go unscathed, especially when he knew Youngman's intent to harm someone. Aaron and her bodyguard were left speechless, standing behind Ryu. Youngman, grinding his teeth, witnessed Ryu coming to Aaron's aid. Aaron and her bodyguard expressed their gratitude to Ryu for saving them. However, Ryu didn't play the hero out of the goodness of his heart. He had his motives. Turning back, he explained that by saving Heavenly Demon's right-hand man, they would be indebted to him. This, Ryu believed, could help him achieve his future plans. Plus, he already had plans to take care of Youngman, making it like killing two birds with one stone. As Ryu slowly approached Youngman, the latter grew scared. With a shaky voice, Youngman hesitantly warned Ryu not to come closer, threatening to kill him. Noticing a scared look on Youngman's face, Ryu, with a sly smile, teasingly asked if Youngman didn't want to throw down, mentioning he was itching to test his powers. So guys, today's like goal is 3,000 likes. Please like and subscribe to support the channel. Now let's continue. Youngman, annoyed and scared, wondered who in their right mind would try to pick a fight with Ryu, the one who slaughtered goblins like vegetables and ranked first in all the regions. Before Youngman could say anything, a realization struck him. However, Ryu broke the silence, suggesting that if Youngman was scared and didn't want to fight, there was one thing he could do. Youngman, confused, asked what, and Ryu, arms crossed and a smirk on his face, replied that he should get down on his knees, beg for mercy, and bark like a dog. Only then would Ryu consider letting him go. Youngman, bewildered, thought Ryu wanted to humiliate him in front of everyone. Turning back to glare at his buddies, he realized he couldn't do this. He couldn't beg in front of them. Now, Youngman was really pissed, seeing Ryu's smiling face. Although he wanted to avoid fighting Ryu at all costs, for some reason, just looking at Ryu made him increasingly furious. Then he got an idea. Recognizing that he was no longer his previous self, he remembered how he punched the wall and destroyed it, showcasing his superhuman strength. Youngman, thinking he could land a punch on Ryu if he tried and then mercilessly kill him. Then he started to laugh arrogantly, addressing Ryu as a bastard. He prepared his fist to strike Ryu, leaving his buddies wondering what was about to happen. Now Youngman slowly approached Ryu while stretching his arms, saying Ryu shouldn't have messed with him, and now Ryu will die because of his arrogance. Then we see Youngman getting happy with a sweet face, thinking he is slowly coming toward Ryu. And just like this, he will land a punch to Ryu's face, and then he will make Ryu's face his punching bag. Then suddenly the red scythe from Ryu's hand disappeared, startling everyone. Again, with a confident look, Ryu explained that as Youngmin is fighting barehanded, so he will also fight without any weapon, as people might think Ryu is bullying the weak and the fight will be no fun. Now hearing this, Youngmin got really pissed off. But Ryu had enough of Youngmin's nonsense, and in an instant he dashed toward Youngmin, startling him. Then Youngmin prepared his punch, saying Ryu is an overconfident bastard as he stored his weapon, and now is dashing toward him like a sitting duck, and because of that, he will die. With great force, he swung his punch toward Ryu's face, but Ryu dodged it effortlessly, and in return, gave a devastating kick onto Youngmin's stomach. Youngmin flew backward, heavily injured. Now Youngmin was in immense pain, lying on the ground, holding his hand, groaning and trembling. However, he didn't stop cursing Ryu. At this point, Ryu had had enough of Youngmin's cursing. Before Youngmin could do something, Ryu kicked Youngmin's face, stating that he had heard more than enough cursing, and his ear would rot if he hears more. But Ryu didn't stop there. Before Youngmin could stand and think about what to do, Ryu grabbed Youngmin from his collar and started punching Youngmin's face like a punching bag. Now, Youngmin was in too much pain, feeling like he would die from the pain. He wondered how the hell his fist could hurt this bad. It was like being beaten by a hammer. At that moment, Youngmin realized Ryu's fists were as strong as his, and on top of that, Ryu was also lightning fast. Just then, Ryu prepared his heavy punch, and bam, Youngmin was done for. His vision was getting blurry, and his buddies prepared their bows and weapons toward Ryu, launching an arrow toward Ryu's head. Seeing this, Aaron shouted in panic, warning Ryu to dodge it. However, Ryu, being the god of death, couldn't die with this lousy arrow, and he swiftly dodged it. Seeing this, the bow guy panicked, but before he could prepare another arrow, Ryu, with his lightning-fast speed, dashed toward the bow guy. Although the bow guy launched his arrow, it didn't hit Ryu, and in an instant, Ryu came behind him, shocking him. Ryu expressed his admiration for how skilled the bow guy was with his bow. Then, with a swing, Ryu mercilessly ripped the bow guy's hand, and he started to scream intensely. Seeing this, the dagger guy and the bald guy, although scared, also started cursing Ryu. With that, they rushed toward Ryu with their daggers. However, Ryu, with a gleeful smile, used his skill, Seal of Death, and a red eye with a skull appeared on the bald guy's head, increasing his damage by 2x. With his scythe, his attack increased by 2, and with a single swing, he chopped off the bald guy's both legs. The bald guy fell to the ground in agony, screaming and groaning. Seeing this, the dagger guy was just too scared. He felt like he would pee in his pants. Then, Ryu dashed toward the dagger guy, with a serious face, stating that as they were holding weapons trying to kill someone, they must also be prepared to be killed by someone with a weapon. Again, with a single swing, like cutting a carrot, he chopped off the dagger guy's hands, leaving him in unimaginable pain with a terrified look on his face. Meanwhile, Ryu was satisfied, seeing that by using Seal of Death and adding it with his scythe, 2x damage was enough to penetrate the armor. Now the bow guy, the bald guy, and the dagger guy all were lying on the ground, screaming and crying in pain, while trembling. Seeing them, Ryu thought it was not enough for him, so he once again slowly started to walk toward them. Then, we see Ryu had slowly made multiple deep cuts on their bodies, slowly torturing them. At that moment, the pain was so intense that they started to beg Ryu to just kill them, as dying was more bearable than this hellish torture. But Ryu didn't stop there, and with a swing, he separated the blood from his scythe, saying to stop crying like a baby as he wasn't going to kill them. Now, seeing how terrified the trio was, Ryu's job was done. He didn't intend to kill them from the start. He just wanted to show them what might happen if they messed with him, as he had future plans for Youngmin and his crew. Turning back towards Youngmin, who cowered behind a tree with a swollen face and a bloody nose, Ryu declared that hiding was useless. Not even a god could save him now. With a swift swing of his scythe, Ryu chopped off Youngmin's right hand, causing blood to spatter like a fountain. Youngmin, left in unimaginable pain, wore a horrified expression. Ryu, coldly observing the scene, reminded Youngmin not to be a crybaby. Compared to the pain they inflicted on him, it wasn't even close. Another ruthless swing of the scythe severed Youngmin's other hand. But Ryu's brutality didn't end there. Ryu began to mercilessly torture Youngmin, shocking even the bodyguard. Seeing this, the bodyguard was too shocked. his eyes wide open, not knowing what to do. He thought Ryu was just too ruthless, as he couldn't believe how mercilessly Ryu chopped their body parts like it was nothing. Even when they lost the will to fight, Ryu continued torturing them until they begged for death. Then continued saying others might feel he is too ruthless, but he liked this type of people. As Ryu was chopping off Youngman's other leg, the bodyguard was in awe, seeing the ruthless Ryu. He was in love. The bodyguard was still lost in his daydream when Ryu's voice abruptly woke him up. After the brutal torture session had concluded, Ryu strolled casually toward Ahrin and the bodyguard, inquiring if they were okay. They responded with a bit of panic, expressing their gratitude to Ryu. Pointing his thumb nonchalantly towards the incapacitated Youngmin and his crew, Ryu remarked that they didn't need to worry about them. They were in a condition where they couldn't even masturbate. Arin and her bodyguard bowed their heads once again, thanking Ryu for his intervention. Curious, Arin asked what would happen if Youngman and his men died due to excessive bleeding. Ryu bluntly stated that if they died, they die, comparing them to wind beasts. Observing Ahrin's compassionate nature, Ryu realized she might struggle in this harsh world. However, the bodyguard interrupted Ryu's thoughts, questioning why he let Youngman and his men live. He argued that killing enemies was better to prevent potential future problems. Hearing this, Youngman grew terrified, but Ryu, with a knowing smile, found the bodyguard intriguing, as he knows exactly what type of world it is turning into, and only these types of people will survive longer in the future. Then, Ryu said the reason he didn't kill those guys was simple. Killing them would not bring any benefit to him. The bodyguard was a bit confused and asked if they might seek revenge in the future if left alive. Ryu glaring at them, who were so terrified that if Ryu even clapped his hands, they might shit their pants. Ryu, with a smile on his face, asked the bodyguard does he think these guys had the will to take revenge, and if they wanted to, he was ready for a round 2 of torture. Then, Ryu elaborated further, explaining that mindlessly killing people would decrease the player population. Hearing Ryu's explanation, the bodyguard had a moment of realization. He grasped what Ryu meant. Fewer survivors in each round meant fewer available spots for people to pass. In that moment, the bodyguard's admiration for Ryu deepened. He saw Ryu not only as strong but also incredibly smart, finding him downright amazing. Understanding the situation, the bodyguard sighed, declaring that he wouldn't pay attention to these useless trash. Once again, he thanked Ryu for his assistance, but then the bodyguard stopped Ryu, asking if Ryu could tell his real name or even his bank account name so that he could compensate him. Ryu didn't stop, and with a cold voice said, "No need." And just like that, he vanished into the deep forest. Now the bodyguard was left wondering. Ryu had just helped them, and didn't even ask for anything in return. He would have to report this to the heavenly demon. However, a groaning voice interrupted his thoughts. As he turned back, it was Youngman crying in pain. Seeing them, the bodyguard was too eager to kill them, but as Ryu told them not to, he somehow managed to control his anger. Then he spit on Youngman's face, saying, "Disgusting," and they left. Then, the scene shifts, and we see all the players arguing about whom to vote for. They started fighting among themselves, creating a chaotic situation. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the chaos, and it's the green-haired guy. With a serious tone, he stated that only 2 hours were left, and fighting wouldn't bring any good to them. Hearing this, other players asked what they should do and if he had any solution. The green-haired guy confidently said he indeed had a plan, shocking everyone. With a smirking face, he thought that people are just too foolish, easily falling for his skill. We see all the players with hypnotic eyes following the green-haired guy, who gave an evil smile. Then we go back to the past to see what this green-haired guy's ability is. His unique skill is named Rune of Persuasion, and using this when he talks to someone, there are high chances that they will obey his words. Initially, when he got this ability, he was angry, thinking about how he could fight using this seemingly useless skill. However, to test it, he saw a woman struggling to fight 3 goblins. He started shouting that the woman was in grave danger and that they should help her. As soon as the other players heard his words, they started running toward the woman to save her. He realized how deadly his skill was. Just by communicating with someone, he could manipulate their minds to do whatever he wanted. Now the task of becoming the zone leader was a piece of cake for him using this skill. Then the green-haired guy said they first have to decide on some candidates, so they can narrow down whom to vote for, and they will select 5 candidates. Hearing this, the players said it's not a bad idea, and they don't think they have any better idea than this. Now, the green-haired guy started to laugh, thinking his plan is going smoothly. The crowd was in deep thought about which 5 people to choose, and the green-haired guy was seeing this, enjoying the show as he knew he would be there as one of the 3 candidates. Now the players started to see him as a reliable guy. Just as he thought, someone from the crowd said he wanted the green-haired guy to be one of the 5 candidates, and following him, others also started saying yes. When all the players were fighting, not knowing what to do, he was the one who guided them, so he could become a good leader. Hearing this, the green-haired guy tried to act like he didn't expect anyone would have said his name, saying he is not capable enough to be a leader. But all the players started to praise him, saying he has the qualities of a leader. From inside, the green-haired guy was just too happy, thinking about how foolish all these players are, easily getting manipulated. Then he said if all the players are saying so, although he didn't want to, he will become one of the candidates. The remaining 4 candidates went like this. They selected Black Scythe, who was ranked first. Then a guy named Life is a Documentary, who was ranked second. Then the green-haired guy said, as all the candidates were selected, now he will start with a warm and kind smile. He said that if he becomes the zone leader, but before he could finish his sentence, Life is a Documentary intervened, saying this is all bullshit. As the green-haired guy turned back, he saw a muscular guy with a tattoo on his neck cleaning his ear with his pinky finger. His name was Life is a Documentary, the second-ranked guy in the zone. With an angry face, he said he can't listen to his bullshit anymore. Hearing this, the green-haired guy, with a serious face, started to say that his use of words was too harsh and people like him would not become good leaders. But Life the Documentary got furious, saying he is not here to listen to a lecture, especially not from a weak, pathetic guy like him who looks like he still drinks his mommy's milk. Now hearing this, the green-haired guy got a little angry, but he was also shocked, thinking if his skill was not working on him. And if that's the case, then that means his level is higher than his. Life is a Documentary started to threaten the players, saying if they don't vote for him, he will kill everyone. Now hearing this, the green-haired guy laughingly started to lecture him again, saying, does he really think people will listen to him if he threatens them and chooses him as the leader? But before he could finish his sentence, Life is a Documentary's blood was boiling in anger. Suddenly, in a slash, he slashed the green-haired guy's neck and blood splashed everywhere. At first, the green-haired guy didn't realize what happened, but then, holding his neck in immense pain, he was trying to say something, but words were not coming from his mouth. And just like that, the green-haired guy died. Now, Life is a Documentary, blood on his back and clothes, and with a serious expression, said he doesn't like when someone lectures him, and if they don't vote for him, they'll also die like this piece of shit. Seeing this, all the players started shouting and panicking, saying he killed the green-haired guy and he is a psycho. Hearing this, Life is a Documentary pointed his bloody dagger toward the players and with a deadly look said, so what if he killed him? And if someone has any issue, he can come forward, and he will treat him very well. The people who got manipulated by the green-haired guy, still a little hypnotic, started saying, Life is a Documentary is a psycho, and they will never vote for him. Now hearing this, he let out an evil smile. In a flash, he dashed toward them and started slaughtering them. After a while, his whole face and clothes got covered in blood, and he was very happy and excited, killing people without worrying about the corpse. The thought that he can kill as much as people without anyone stopping or arresting him excited him even more. Then he started to laugh with a wide smile and a bloodthirsty look, thinking, now with that, everyone will vote for him. Once he becomes the zone leader, the first thing he will do is kill that arrogant bastard Black Scythe. Meanwhile, Ryu was just chilling and killing some goblins, leveling up to level 16. Now he was a bit disappointed because when he reached level 16, even after killing 200 monsters, he didn't level up at all, as the level of monsters is not higher than 10, so the experience is too low to level up anymore. But then, the 3 hours passed, and a yellow light covered Ryu's entire body. In the next scene, we see everyone slowly getting transported to a different place. Some players were dead, while some were scared and some were heavily injured. Seeing these horrible scenes, the bodyguard and Aren were shocked and speechless, wondering what the hell just happened here, and why there are so many dead and injured people. Meanwhile, Rao from behind, seeing this, thought just like always, Life is a Documentary took the leadership role again by killing and threatening people. Seeing Life as a Documentary, Ryu himself admitted that he is a natural-born fighter and is very strong, but his personality was that of a psycho. He continued, seeing his bloody face, that it's a good idea to get rid of a time bomb like him. But then he said it's not the right time to do so. Life is a documentary called Ryu arrogantly, saying he was waiting for him. Ryu asked what he wants, and Life is a documentary said not much. With an arrogant smile, he said he wants Ryu to become his underling and work for him. Hearing this, Ryu gave a neutral expression, asking why he should work under him. Life is a documentary, confidently spinning his dagger, said it's because if Ryu doesn't work under him, he will kill him. Hearing this, Ryu gave a little chuckle, startling him. Then, with a serious face, he said, "So Life is a documentary wants to fight with Ryu." Ryu chuckled a little and said, now that he is in a good mood, if Life is a documentary gets on his knees and begs for mercy, Ryu might let it slide. Whatever he said. The musclehead got a little confused, saying he is the one who is going to kill Ryu, so why should he beg for mercy? He started to threaten Ryu again, but Ryu had enough of this, cutting him midway and asking if Life is a documentary doesn't understand Korean. With a terrifying red aura, Ryu summoned his black scythe and said he thinks once he chops off 1 or 2 of his limbs, then he will understand what he is saying. Seeing Ryu and his terrifying aura, the musclehead got scared and panicked, realizing he messed up with the wrong guy. Ryu, on the other hand, tauntingly asked the musclehead why he's not answering, or if he forgot how to talk. Hearing this, the musclehead gritted his teeth and introduced himself as the gang leader of Jungsik. Shouting, he said he's not scared because of some toy Ryu was holding and that he's ready for a fight. Ryu, with a small smile, explained that he's brave for sure, but he can't kill him here. He wants the musclehead to become the zone leader because he plans to use him in the 3rd round. As the musclehead was ready to attack with a sparkling sound, the angel appeared from the sky. Ryu said the musclehead is lucky, turned back, and advised him to pick his opponents carefully next time if he wants to live a longer life. With that, he took back his scythe and left the insulted musclehead behind. Feeling a bit relieved, the musclehead explained that the pressure from Ryu was too enormous. He felt like he could just die from fear. Then, grinding his teeth in anger, he vowed that once he becomes the zone leader, he will kill Ryu mercilessly, slowly torturing him. Now the angel noticed that the humans killed each other and died, but said it's none of her business. With a flick of her finger, she started the voting quest. The timer started at 5 minutes, and they could vote for whoever they wanted by looking at the person for a while. They had to say the word vote in their minds, and whoever didn't vote in this 5 minutes would die. As soon as the timer started, the musclehead stood proudly, thinking about what he would do once he became the zone leader. However, his pride took a hit when he noticed a girl not looking toward him. He threatened her, saying he would kill her if she voted for anyone else. She retorted, saying she already voted for him and didn't want to stare at some musclehead with blood on his face. The musclehead, true to form, shouted that anyone not looking at him would die. When the 5 minutes were over, the angel with a kind smile announced that it was time to reveal the results. A big screen appeared with the names, and although the musclehead was in the 1st rank, he only won by a few hundred votes. Ryu, on the other hand, got a whopping 2077 votes. Furious, the musclehead started searching for people who didn't vote for him. However, the angel announced that Life is a documentary was ranked number 1, making him the zone leader. With a clap, the angel handed over the position to the musclehead, who smirked, thinking that a little longer, and he would make Ryu regret. But before he could dwell on it, something caught his attention. Checking his skill window, he noticed that he could only command 10 people in total, and it was a one-time use skill. After he used it on 10 people to follow his command, he would no longer be able to use this skill, and it wouldn't work on players with classes. This revelation left him devastated. The angel, with a mischievous smile, continued, saying the round was not over yet. There was a hidden quest, and hearing this, everyone started to panic. Then, a quest window popped up, explaining that they could obtain a class after acquiring a class-related item, leaving everyone confused about what this meant. The angel then explained that they would have completed this quest if they had reached level 10 before the vote began. Hearing this, a man scratching his head asked how he could kill monsters when there were no monsters around. The angel's facial expression became a little intense and angry as she said, "There were monsters everywhere. It's just that they were too lazy and scared to find them." The angel continued, revealing that a total of 80,000 people worldwide had acquired a class in the 2nd round before the vote. She also mentioned that someone from their zone had achieved this feat. Everyone was shocked and asked who it was. With a flicker of her hand, the angel displayed a big system window with all the information. There, Ryu was ranked 1 in the entire world, and was the first to acquire a class, followed by Heavenly Demon. As everyone stared in amazement, not only did Ryu get a class, but he was the first in the world to do so. On top of that, his class name was Grim Reaper, the god of death. While whispers circulated about Ryu, he stood casually with his hands in his pockets, just chilling. So the video ends here. Write part 4 on comment if you watched till here. Thanks for watching. This is the story of Ryu, the strongest hunter on Earth, who dies because he was a single virgin loser. In the previous episode, we saw how Ryu chopped Youngman and his crew's hands and legs, and tortured them until they begged Ryu to kill them. Then, the green-haired guy tried to become the zone leader with his mind-manipulating skill, but the musclehead cut his throat, killing him. Afterward, he started killing other players like a psycho and threatening them to vote for him or he would kill everyone. And if that wasn't enough, he even dared to challenge Ryu. But when Ryu released his deadly aura, the musclehead almost wet himself in fear, realizing he had messed with the wrong guy. Then, the voting started, and by just a few votes, the musclehead became the zone leader. Finally, when the angel announced that Ryu obtained the class Grim Reaper, the god of death, everyone got shocked, staring at Ryu in amazement. Now, upon seeing the words, Grim Reaper, the god of death, everyone was shocked and began gossiping about what kind of class that could be. Some commented that just the name itself sounded incredibly powerful, and they wondered if that's why Ryu was wielding that massive scythe. Amidst the gossip, the musclehead was getting annoyed because his plan was to use his zone leader skill to control Ryu and beat him into a pulp. But who would have known that Ryu had obtained a class from who knows where? So guys, today we have 4,500 likes. Please like and subscribe to support the channel. Now, let's continue. The angel explained that this ranking was based on who changed their class first. When the angel saw the system window and noticed that Ryu was not only the first in her zone to change his class, but also the first in the entire world, she praised him. Ryu had obtained his class in only 39 minutes and 42 seconds, which was remarkable. The angel mentioned that the Grim Reaper class was a hidden class, and only one person in the entire world could obtain it. After that, the class would disappear. Interestingly, Ryu's name, Black Scythe, matched perfectly with his class. With a mischievous smile, the angel even asked if Ryu could see the future or something like that, implying that his name matched his class too perfectly. Ryu, ever cool and composed with a neutral face, explained that he didn't know anything about it, and that obtaining the Grim Reaper class was purely coincidental. As they continued their conversation, the other players noticed that the angel was not talking rudely to Ryu, unlike her usual demeanor. Ryu smiled to himself, realizing that this angel was unaware of the process by which he obtained the Grim Reaper class. She only knew he was a Grim Reaper, and Grim Reapers were the natural enemies of the angel. Now, upon hearing Ryu's answer, the angel slowly placed her hand on her lips, showing interest. Her expression took on a somewhat naughty look, as she couldn't believe someone from her zone had acquired a class. This meant that Ryu would be the only one unaffected by the zone leader's skill. Hearing this, all the players got a little confused and began asking what she meant. The angel decided to explain everything related to this with a warm smile. She clarified that the zone leader's skill, authority, would not work on people who had obtained a class. This meant that the musclehead would not be able to command Ryu. She also added that she forgot to mention the most important information. The zone leader could only use their skill on 10 people, and it was a one-time use skill, not an unlimited one. After hearing this information, a chilling silence fell among the players. Meanwhile, the musclehead was greatly annoyed and he cursed the angel, wondering why she had revealed this to everyone. He even muttered, "Is she a bitch?" The angel responded by saying that the fastest player to receive a class should receive a deserving reward. With a flick of her finger, she granted Ryu 2 rewards. The first was a low-rank armor selection coupon, and the second was a mysterious chest. Ryu wasted no time and immediately opened the armor selection. In front of Ryu, 3 different armors appeared: a plate armor, a leather armor, and a mage's robe. Without hesitation, Ryu selected the leather armor, as it would provide some durability without hindering his agility. Next, Ryu opened the mysterious chest, revealing 3 options: 3x experience boost for the round, 3,000 gold, and some information related to round 3. Ryu contemplated his choices, considering that in round 3, monsters would rain from the sky. Therefore, he decided that the 3x experience boost would be the best choice to help him level up. The angel announced that the round had ended, and they would reconvene for round 3 next month. As everyone slowly began to vanish in a bright yellow light, the angel's tone turned creepy as she expressed her anticipation for the next round and the expressions on their faces. With that, the round came to a close, and the system notified that a total of 873,500,205 people had survived this round. In the next moment, we see Youngman panicking, waking up with heavy breathing and drenched in sweat. He first checked his trembling hand, which seemed to be fine, and then his other hand and legs, confirming that they were all intact. This gave him some relief, realizing that as long as he didn't die in that world, no harm would be caused to his real body. With a serious expression, he vowed that in the future, even if God asked him to act rudely in front of Ryu, he would not behave that way again. He didn't want to experience the pain and fear he had felt today ever again. The scene shifts, and we see the bodyguard trying to comfort Aren, who is sitting on her sofa while holding a cup of coffee. She's once again terrified because of what happened, but mentions that this time she didn't do anything. It was all thanks to the bodyguard and Ryu that she was safe. Despite her fear, she smiles and expresses her deep gratitude to the bodyguard, thanking him from the bottom of her heart. The bodyguard, a bit hesitant and shy, replies that he's just doing his duty, which is to guard her body, so it's not a big deal. Aren's expression turns a little sad. She really wanted to express her gratitude to Black Scythe from the bottom of her heart, and asked if there was any way to do that. The bodyguard explains that since they don't know Black Scythe's real name or what he looks like, there's no way to find him. He adds that he thinks Black Scythe doesn't want his real identity revealed, as he even refused to share his bank account number, which could have led to discovering his true identity. Hearing this, Aren becomes genuinely sad, realizing there's not much they can do, even though she desperately wants to meet him. The bodyguard suggests an idea. If Aren really wants to show her appreciation to Black Scythe, she could consider giving him a meaningful present when they meet in the 3rd round. Aren agrees that it sounds like a good plan and promises to think of something that Black Scythe will definitely like. The bodyguard advised Aren to eat, get some rest, and relax, assuring her that he would see her the next morning. With that, he left her place. As he was about to step into the elevator, his phone rang, and to his surprise, it was none other than the Heavenly Demon on the line. The bodyguard congratulated the Heavenly Demon on obtaining the Dark Knight class. The Heavenly Demon downplayed it, asking about how the bodyguard and Aren were doing. The bodyguard, a bit hesitantly, explained that due to an unfortunate incident, he and Aren had only managed to reach level 8. Fortunately, no one had suffered serious injuries. Upon hearing this, the Heavenly Demon's tone became more serious. The bodyguard, while heading towards his car, mentioned that he was on his way to meet the Heavenly Demon and would provide a detailed report in person, as it was a long story. In a deep voice, the Heavenly Demon inquired if it was related to Black Scythe, to which the bodyguard affirmed. The Heavenly Demon instructed the bodyguard to come to his hotel, expressing a strong desire to hear every detail related to Black Scythe. As the bodyguard entered his car, someone was observing him from a distance, and that someone was none other than Ryu. Rewinding time by 10 minutes, we find Ryu waking up from the dungeon, with Wani sound asleep beside him. Ryu wasted no time and immediately activated his tracking skill, anticipating that the first thing the bodyguard would do was report everything to the Heavenly Demon. Ryu prepared himself to follow the bodyguard's trail, taking advantage of Wani's deep slumber. Returning to the present, Ryu sported a satisfied smile, knowing that his hunch had been correct, as the bodyguard was indeed heading straight to the Heavenly Demon. The scene shifts to a dimly lit night under the full moon, where the Heavenly Demon stands on his balcony, gazing at the city below. He's enjoying the peaceful moment and remarks that nights like this are perfect for work. With that thought, he turns away, knowing that he will soon receive a report about Black Scythe and then get to work. After a while, he sits down on his sofa, waiting for the bodyguard to arrive. He can't help but wonder about this mysterious figure, Black Scythe, who holds the #1 ranking in the entire world. Anxious thoughts occupy his mind, and he begins tapping his fingers on the table, contemplating whether Black Scythe had attacked the bodyguard and Aren. In the midst of his anxiety, he slowly raises his hand and declares that if Black Scythe dared to harm his people, he wouldn't let him go unpunished, no matter his world ranking. At this moment, we finally get a glimpse of the Heavenly Demon's face. He sits with a dead serious expression, clad in a black suit, holding a glass of wine in one hand, the other on his cheek, and his legs elegantly crossed. He means business and won't take any threats lightly, even from the top-ranked player in the world. Then, as he was thinking about what he would do to Ryu, the bodyguard finally arrived at his place and started knocking on his door. They greeted each other, and then the bodyguard, again with a smiling face, congratulated the Heavenly Demon for getting a unique class as well as surviving the round. The Heavenly Demon sat on his sofa and, while drinking his wine, said the second round was easy as a piece of cake. He obtained the unique class as he was lucky, and he is nothing special. The bodyguard said that luck is also a skill. Plus, getting second in the whole of Korea is not something that luck can achieve, and it's an honor that he is working with someone like the Heavenly Demon. While the Heavenly Demon was hearing all the praises with a little smile, sipping the wine and glaring at the bodyguard, he placed his wine on the table and said that the bodyguard must want something from him. That's why he is flattering him so much. While the bodyguard was silent. Then, with a gentle smile, the Heavenly Demon asked while nodding his head, saying he can ask anything if he wants to, and not to be scared. It's not like he will eat him or something. The bodyguard hesitantly asked if the Heavenly Demon could tell how or from where he obtained his class. The Heavenly Demon, with a smile waving his hand, said it was nothing special, as he was just killing some monsters, and suddenly the system notified him that he obtained a class. That's all. Now let's take a closer look at the Heavenly Demon, grinning mischievously. He's got a little secret up his sleeve. You see, it's not because he battled some monsters that he landed himself a new class. Nope, he was just plain lucky. When that angel handed out unique classes to everyone, he didn't score any regular old skills. Instead, he got his hands on a nifty item that lets him switch classes. All he needs to do is reach level 10 and bam! He'll automatically become a Dark Knight. So when he bragged about his class, he wasn't fibbing. Luck was on his side big time. But here's the kicker. He can't spill the beans about this vital piece of info to just anyone, not even his closest comrade. You see, people can change their tune at the drop of a hat, and he's not about to trust anyone but himself. He's playing his cards close to his chest. Now our Heavenly Demon gets down to business, his tone serious as a heart attack. He's eager to hear how they got banged up during the second round. His eyes turn icy as he asks, "Was it Black Scythe?" It's a chilling look, let me tell you. The bodyguard, quick on his feet, reassures him it wasn't Black Scythe who did the damage. In fact, he was their savior in this mess. The Heavenly Demon raises an eyebrow, surprised for a moment. He wants the full scoop, every last detail. So the bodyguard spills the beans, telling the whole tale of what went down, and then he drops a concern bomb. He's worried that Aaron might have taken a hit mentally from all of this. The Heavenly Demon sat there, deep in thought. His fingers were all twisted up, showing just how close he came to losing his trusted subordinate and nearly losing Aaron. It was a real serious situation. He picked up his glass of wine from the table, taking a sip, and then he asked about the fate of the guys who tried to off his bodyguard. He wondered if Black Scythe had given them a painful end. The bodyguard spilled the beans, saying that Black Scythe had really given those guys a beating, tortured them till they were begging for death, but he didn't go all the way and kill them. The reason? Well, he figured there was no point in offing, and he also mentioned that fewer people meant less spots for others to make it through. Hearing this, the Heavenly Demon nodded in agreement, thinking that Black Scythe wasn't completely off base. But he had a question in mind. What if those guys came back for revenge down the line? The bodyguard laid out the whole torture scenario, and the Heavenly Demon sipped his wine, going deep into thought. It seemed like Black Scythe wasn't exactly a do-gooder. He probably had his own motives for helping the subordinate, and our Heavenly Demon didn't like being in anyone's debt. So he decided that he had to meet this Black Scythe character soon. He stood up from his seat, thinking that when he did meet Black Scythe, he'd have to thank him from the bottom of his ass. Sorry, from the bottom of his heart. He made it clear that he wanted to keep an eye on Black Scythe, and that if the guy needed anything or asked anything of the bodyguard, he had to report it pronto. Being indebted wasn't his thing, and he wanted to stay on top of things. Then, as he was leaving, the Heavenly Demon stopped midway, turned back, and with cold eyes like a venomous snake, he addressed those who had attempted to harass Aaron, referring to them as sons of bitches. He asked for their usernames. As we zoomed out, we saw Ryu standing outside the building of the Heavenly Demon. He was ready to leave the place as his work was done. Now he knew where the Heavenly Demon lived, and his plans would proceed smoothly. The Heavenly Demon was a very strong player, given his class, Dark Knight, which was terrifying. To use the skills of a Dark Knight, the user had to collect a certain aura called Dark Aura, obtainable only by killing a person and absorbing their life essence. This class suited someone like the heavenly demon who had a penchant for killing, but he targeted only those he considered bad. Ryu pondered with a sweet face whether having someone like him on his team would be too dangerous. He decided he would manage it when the time came. For now, he had to go somewhere important. He hailed a cab and began to think about recruiting her. The scene shifted to the store where Ryu had bought the lottery tickets. Inside the store, the owner was holding his head, clearly upset and frustrated. He expressed his despair, not knowing what to do. Just then, someone entered the store. It was Juri, the store owner's daughter. Seeing her father in distress, Juri approached him and asked what was wrong. Her father hesitated at first, saying it was nothing, but Juri persisted in her questioning. Finally, he admitted that the government had banned lottery tickets. This sudden turn of events had left him in a difficult situation. He explained that a player had recently won multiple lottery tickets, each worth millions of dollars, and the government suspected it was due to some player skill or related issue. As a result, they had banned lotteries all over Korea, and since their store primarily relied on selling lottery tickets, they were now struggling with very few customers. Juri, with a warm smile, assured her father not to worry. She mentioned that she would be graduating soon and would find a part-time job to help with their financial situation during this emergency. Her father, however, insisted that her main focus should be on her studies, as her dream was to become a doctor, and he would handle the money problems. With a bit of a neutral expression, Juri revealed that she had given up on becoming a doctor due to the current situation in the world. Her father suddenly realized the weight of his worries and anxieties, expressing concern about what might happen in the next round and the thought of something happening to Juri being too much for him to bear. He confessed that, despite wanting to be normal, he couldn't help but worry, and if things continued this way, he felt like he might go crazy. Seeing her father in such a state, Juri reassured him, holding his hand and telling him not to worry. She explained that now that she had a class, she wouldn't easily die in some otherworldly place. Her father, still puzzled, asked what she meant by having a class. In response, Juri used her skill. She placed her hand close to her father's hand, and a bright yellow light emitted from her hand, entering her father's body. The sudden display of her power left her father shocked and bewildered. With a bright smile, Juri raised her hand, which emitted a radiant yellow light. She explained to her father that he should be feeling a bit better now because of her unique skill, which she had gained from the other world. Her father indeed felt a lot better than before, and praised Juri for her abilities. He thanked her, and she assured him that he could let her know whenever he was feeling down, and she would use her skill to relieve his worries. With great enthusiasm, Juri encouraged her father to cheer up, and he chuckled, agreeing that whatever would happen in the future, they shouldn't worry about it now. They would face it together when the time came. Just then, the doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of a customer. Juri's dad turned to welcome the customer, but was immediately shocked when he saw that it was none other than Ryu, the person responsible for the government's ban on lottery tickets. Juri whispered to her dad, asking who he was, and her father panic-strickenly replied that he was the person who had won 115 lotteries, all in first place. Due to his winnings, the government had banned lotteries, causing significant trouble for their store. Ryu, with a pat on his shoulder, slowly approached the store owner and asked if he remembered him, mentioning that he had bought many lottery tickets from here a month ago. Juri's dad hesitated but admitted that he did remember. Before he could say anything more, Ryu bowed down, startling her father. Ryu apologized, stating that because of him, the store owner was in trouble. He had seen on the news that after he had won the lottery, the government had banned it, and since the store's main income came from lottery ticket sales, the store owner was facing difficulties. Ryu sincerely expressed his regret. Hearing and seeing Ryu, Juri stared at him, feeling somewhat tense and nervous for some reason. Her father waved his hand, saying that it wasn't Ryu's fault and that it was okay. They weren't starving because they couldn't sell lottery tickets anymore. However, Ryu insisted that it wasn't okay. He believed that since he had caused this trouble, he should be the one to solve it. Ryu handed Juri's father a white envelope and explained that it was compensation. Inside the envelope was $10,000. Before they could say anything, Ryu left, leaving them bewildered. Holding the envelope, Juri's father deep in thought. Juri and her dad decided to return the money, and Juri hurriedly ran to catch up with Ryu. Then we see Juri finally catching up with Ryu, shouting his name from behind. Hearing her, Ryu stopped, and as she came closer she wore a curious expression and asked if he was Ryu. Ryu in turn asked if she knew him, and she hesitantly replied that they were in the same class at college. However, Ryu still didn't recognize her, which left her a bit surprised. She asked if he really had never seen her in class. Ryu responded with a warm smile and explained that he was a single virgin, a shut-in loser, and not good at socializing with people. Then he admitted that he did know her because she was the one he was after for his team. She possessed buffing and incredible support skills, and he had met her in his 27th life on the 7th round, where he had saved her life. There, he had found out that she was his classmate, so it wasn't entirely a lie when he told her he didn't recognize her. Jury, a bit hesitantly, asked Ryu if they could go to a park to talk. Ryu, with a warm smile, nodded and agreed. The scene shifted, and we saw both of them sitting on a bench in the park, somewhat resembling a couple on a date. Jury handed the money envelope to Ryu, insisting that they couldn't accept such a large amount of money. Ryu, knowing that this was precisely why he had given her the money, refused to take it back, which startled Jury. She strongly insisted on him taking at least some of the money, as her hand was starting to hurt from holding it for so long. Ryu firmly declined, explaining that he had given the money to the store owner because he felt guilty for being the reason behind the store's loss of income. Therefore, he couldn't take it back. Hearing this, Jury began to panic, saying that the amount was too large, and they didn't know how to repay his kindness, which was exactly what Ryu wanted. Jury then had an idea and suggested that she would take $1,000 and return the remaining $9,000. Ryu questioned why she was deciding what to do instead of the store owner, and she responded by revealing that the store owner was her dad, so she had the authority to make such a decision. Then, a bit sad, Jury mentioned that she still couldn't believe that Ryu had never seen her in class, as she immediately recognized Ryu when she saw him in the store. Then, her expression turned a little angry, and she pouted, and seeing her Ryu to apologize to her in his thoughts. Then suddenly Jury, enthusiastic, moved closer to Ryu, and urged him to look at her closely and remember her face and name, Jury. Ryu responded with a warm smile, assuring her that he would remember her. Realizing that she was very close to Ryu, Jury blushed slightly. However, her mood shifted once more, and she became a bit sad and depressed, feeling like introducing herself to her classmate at the end of their graduation was a bit awkward. Ryu, still smiling warmly, comforted her, saying that it was okay because now they knew each other. He suggested that even after their graduation, they could meet. Then, he asked if she would mind giving him her number. Jury blushed a little and hesitated for a moment, but eventually she gave her number to Ryu. Ryu mentioned that friends usually had each other's numbers, and with that settled, he said he had to go and left. Jury noticed that she hadn't been able to return the money in the end, but that wasn't the main concern now. Her heart raced wildly, and she felt overwhelmed. She started to feel shy and blush, confessing that she liked Ryu. She explained that she had seen Ryu in her first year, getting brutally bullied, and from then on, whenever she saw Ryu being bullied, she would call the cops for help out of pity for him. Over time, she had started following Ryu regularly and had found herself developing feelings for him. However, she had never mustered the courage to confess her feeling. Now that she had met him again, and Ryu had helped her family, she decided to be more open about her affection. With a slightly tilted head, and while holding her hair, Jury asked if she could invite Ryu for a meal. The video ends here. Write part 5 in the comments for the next part. Thanks for watching. This is the story of Ryu, the strongest hunter on Earth, who dies because he was a single virgin loser. In the previous episode, we saw how even the new angel got a little interested in Ryu. Well, I guess we will be seeing another holy being turn into holy shit. Then Young Min swore to God he will not mess with Ryu. Then we got to see the first look of Heavenly Demon, who thinks he is the main character of this world. And Ryu went out to recruit his next team member. Then we meet Jury, who secretly loves Ryu but she wouldn't be able to confess. She was the one whom Ryu wants to recruit into his team without knowing she loves Ryu. Now Ryu was just chilling on his bed, phone in hand, chatting it up with Jury. She asked if he'd eaten yet, and if he hadn't, could they grab some lunch together around 1. Ryu was like, sure thing, I'll foot the bill. They chatted for a bit, but Ryu couldn't help but notice that Jury was being extra friendly and trying real hard to please him. He figured maybe she was really grateful because he'd given her a nice chunk of money, but something about her attitude seemed a bit off to Ryu. He thought to himself that whatever the reason, getting closer to Jury like this might mean he could recruit her into his team down the line. So he put on this serious face, got up from his bed, and made a declaration that he'd do whatever it takes to keep Jury alive until the last round. So guys, today's like goal is 4,200. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I thank you all from the bottom of my ass, bottom of my heart, for supporting the channel. Now let's continue. A little while later, Ryu was all dressed up in a black shirt and black pants. Wani, his little bro, saw him like that and got a bit puzzled. He asked Ryu where he was off to. Ryu simply said he was meeting a friend. Now that threw Wani for a loop, cause You see, Ryu's a single virgin loser with no friends. Plus, he hardly ever dresses up and takes showers, so it was a shocker. So, Wani got straight to the point and asked, is it a friend or a girl? Hearing that, Ryu didn't see any issue and asked if he couldn't have female friend. Then he hit Wani with a warm smile and told him to go ahead and have lunch without waiting for him. With that, he left to meet up with Juri, leaving Wani in a state of shock. It was a lot to take in, and he had to process it all. Finally, it hit him. Is Ryu really going on a date with a girl? The scene changed, and we found ourselves at a fancy restaurant called Steakhouse. It was one of those really, really expensive joints. Inside, Ryu and Juri were having lunch. Ryu had this warm smile on his face as he asked Juri if she liked the juicy steak they were having. Juri, still kinda lost in her daydream, only caught the word like and blushed a bit, asking, do I like what? Ryu clarified, saying he meant the steak, and Juri finally replied that yes, the steaks were absolutely delicious. Ryu told her to go ahead and enjoy as much juicy steak as she wanted, but you could feel the awkwardness settling in. They both sat there, not saying much, and the atmosphere got a bit uncomfortable. Juri was getting more and more shy, not sure how to break the silence. She told herself to be brave and muster up the courage to say something. Finally, she asked Ryu how he managed to win first place in the lottery 115 times. Ryu, with that same warm smile, replied that an old man with a pig on his head came to him in a dream and gave him the winning numbers. Hearing this, Juri tried to picture that old man with a pig on his head and asked Ryu how much he'd won from all those lottery wins. She made it clear that if Ryu didn't want to share, it was totally fine. Ryu, still with that gentle smile, told her that he'd won enough money that he never had to worry about finances for the rest of his life. But to use that money, he'd have to be alive in the next round. Hearing this, Juri hurriedly inquired about Ryu's experience in the first round of the tower. She shared that it felt like being thrown into hell for her, as she had never even killed an ant before, let alone facing the terrifying challenge of taking down 100 goblins. Ryu, with a neutral expression, admitted that it had been quite a challenging experience for him too. Juri then asked Ryu about the zone he was in. Ryu casually sipped his water and replied that he couldn't remember the exact zone number, but the last digit was a 5. Juri, feeling a bit shy, shared that her zone number ended with 7, so it was a shame that they wouldn't be able to meet in the dungeons. She had hoped their zones would be the same. Ryu, with a reassuring smile, thought to himself that she shouldn't be disappointed because in the future, all the zones would merge into one, and they would definitely meet. Juri then inquired about Ryu's level, to which he replied that he was at level 10. She excitedly shared that she was also level 10 and had acquired a class called Supporter. Ryu, intrigued, asked if that meant she could buff other people's stats like in-game. Juri, now more confident, explained that her skill was called Bless, and by using it, she could enhance all the stats of whoever received her blessing. She activated her skill, and a green light emanated from her hand as she placed it close to Ryu's head. A magical pattern formed, and the system notified Ryu that all his stats had been increased by 50%, an effect that would last for 3 hours. Impressed, Ryu complimented Juri, calling her skill cool. Deep down, he already knew about her skill from his previous life, but the feeling of sharing a meal with a friend was new to him, and he genuinely enjoyed it. The awkwardness that had initially hung in the air had dissipated, and they both continued to enjoy their meal with smiles on their faces. Then, Ryu expressed his gratitude to Juri for the buff, feeling invigorated by the enhancement. Juri, however, gave him a playful glare before breaking into a joyful smile. She assured Ryu that it was no big deal, and that if he ever needed anything from her in the future, he could call her any time, and she would be there with her thing. Ryu simply nodded in agreement, saying, "Okay." Then Ryu inquired about what Juri wanted to tell him on the phone, and Juri seemed a bit startled, realizing she should have mentioned it earlier. She playfully scolded herself for being a bit slow. However, with a gentle and warm smile, she began expressing her gratitude to Ryu for the money he had given them. She explained that the money had been a tremendous help, as her family was in debt, and they had managed to repay all their loans thanks to Ryu's assistance. Her father was now happy, all thanks to Ryu's generosity. She also promised that she would find a way to repay the money in the future. Ryu was a bit surprised by this expression of gratitude and told Juri that she didn't need to repay him. He reminded her that he had already acknowledged that he was responsible for her father losing customers, so it was only fair for him to compensate for it. Hearing this, Juri stood up, clapping her hands, and excitedly mentioned that if Ryu didn't want money, she could offer him something else. Then her hand started to emit a bright yellow light, and she took out an item from her inventory. Curious, Ryu asked her what it was, and Juri extended her hand, revealing a purple crystal with unusual patterns. She admitted that she didn't know what it was, but she had obtained it while killing goblins. She insisted that Ryu take it and said he couldn't refuse. The scene then shifted to outside the restaurant where Juri bid farewell to Ryu. Ryu, in return, wished her to take care and not to die in the next round. After Juri left the park, Ryu wore a serious expression and opened his inventory to check the description of the peculiar crystal she had given him. The system notification revealed that it was a low-rank purple mana stone. Ryu hadn't expected to obtain this item so soon, especially not from Juri. As Ryu held the purple mana stone high in his hand and gazed at it with a contemplative look, he remarked that he knew exactly what this item was, but hadn't anticipated receiving it, especially not from Juri. He proceeded to explain that once a player reached level 20, they unlocked a feature called Combination. This feature allowed players to fuse mana crystals like the purple one with their equipment, granting the equipment unique skills or attributes. There were 7 types of mana stones: red for damage, orange for strength, yellow for luck, green for agility, blue for intelligence, and dark blue for defense. Ryu emphasized that the purple one was the rarest, with a very low chance of obtaining it. Unlike the other crystals that increased specific attributes, the purple stone enhanced skills or attributes for all stats. With a gentle smile, Ryu expressed his luck at receiving the purple mana stone for free, considering it a fortunate turn of events. He then realized that his luck stat was doubled due to the Bless skill. Was that the reason he was having such a lucky day? However, Ryu's meeting with Juri was primarily thanks to her Bless skill. With only 30 minutes left until the buff expired, Ryu wanted to open the golden mysterious pouch he had acquired in round 2, capitalizing on his doubled luck stat. But before that, Ryu reached into his pocket and pulled out a packet full of small mealworms. Still holding the worms with a serious expression, Ryu proceeded to explain that his slaughterer skill increased all his stats by 1% for each opponent he killed, and this applied to bugs as well. With that, he threw the packet full of bugs onto the ground and, with a solemn face, offered his apology. Then, he began stomping on the bugs. As he continued to stomp, the system notified him of his progress: 45 opponents killed, then 67, until he finally reached his 100th kill, causing all his stats to increase by 100%. After this bug-squashing exercise, Ryu checked his status window. His luck stat had skyrocketed to an impressive 45. Initially, his base luck was 15, but with the help of his slaughterer skill, he had boosted his stats by 100%, bringing his luck stat to 30. The Bless skill from Juri had further increased his stats by 50%, resulting in his luck reaching 45. Ryu then retrieved the mysterious gold pouch, and the system notified him that it was a gold pouch, and upon opening it, one could receive gold coins ranging from 1 to 9,999, determined randomly based on their luck stat. Ryu cautiously opened the pouch, holding high hopes, but expecting to receive no more than 6,000 gold. However, what he witnessed left him utterly astonished, his eyes wide open in surprise. The system notified him that he had obtained a whopping 9,999 gold. Seeing this, Ryu couldn't contain his happiness, exclaiming that today, the god of luck was truly on his side. With this newfound wealth, he now had a total of 16,249 gold. Ryu added that he could buy an epic item with this amount and still have money left over. However, he had no plans to spend any money at the moment, as the item he desired would become available in the shop after 2 weeks. With that decision made, Ryu closed his status window and inventory. The scene then shifted back to Ryu's building. As Ryu entered the room, he greeted Wani, who was sipping hot chocolate. Seeing Ryu, Wani's eyes sparkled with excitement as he eagerly asked how Ryu's date had gone. Ryu, on the other hand, was momentarily taken aback by the question and paused. Without offering any details about the date, Ryu simply sat on the sofa. Wani, sensing his brother's reluctance to discuss it, asked if Ryu wasn't coming home after a date with the girl he had feelings for. Ryu, feeling a bit awkward, replied, dismissing the question and redirecting the conversation by asking what Wani had eaten for lunch. Wani, feeling comfortable in his seat, replied that he had enjoyed black bean noodles, emphasizing how delicious they were. Ryu, with a joyful smile, assured Wani that he could have ordered something even better. Wani pouted, defending his choice of black bean noodle, explaining that he had been craving them for a long time. Ryu reflected on how just 1 month ago, they were in a dire situation and had to beg for food. Now, with money, Wani still enjoyed his previous lifestyle of food, which Ryu found perfectly fine. He was genuinely happy to see Wani enjoying himself. As Wani engrossed himself in watching the epic battle between Luffy and Kaido in one piece, his excitement palpable, Ryu's thoughts were elsewhere. Ryu had his mind on the price of Bitcoin, contemplating that it would rise by a significant margin in the next 2 weeks before potentially crashing. He knew he needed to withdraw his money before the crash, but he had some plans in mind. One of those plans was to buy a Lamborghini. To make this dream a reality, Ryu first decided to obtain his driver's license. He took the driving license exam and aced it with a remarkable 95% score, leaving everyone astonished. With his license secured, Ryu wasted no time and placed an order for a Lamborghini. Finally, the day arrived when the price of Bitcoin increased by a factor of 10, prompting Ryu to swiftly withdraw all his Bitcoin holdings. Now, with a devilish grin on his face, Ryu was visibly pleased with his actions. Seeing him smile like that, Wani couldn't contain his curiosity and asked if something good had happened. Ryu explained that he had just sold all his Bitcoin and made a massive profit. When Ryu asked how much he had earned, he revealed that he had made 300 billion won, equivalent to a staggering $222,662,700. Wani was utterly shocked by the astronomical amount, and he started to shake with disbelief. Ryu casually mentioned that they had multiplied their initial investment by 20-fold and sat back on the sofa, relaxed. Now, Wani, still in disbelief, said when Ryu first told Wani he invested all their money into Bitcoin. Wani wanted to stop Ryu, but now to think they hit the mega jackpot. Ryu, with a warm smile, replied that he was just lucky as he himself didn't know they would have won that big. That's why he withdrew all the money, as greediness leads to destruction. Then Wani asked, "That means Ryu will not invest in Bitcoin anymore?" And Ryu replied, "Yes, no more Bitcoin stuff." Hearing this, Wani let out a sigh of relief as he took a sip of his hot coffee. However, Ryu dropped another bombshell. He planned to invest all the money into stocks. Wani was so shocked that he ended up spilling his hot chocolate, and with teary eyes, he asked Ryu why he was taking such a risky step when they already had enough money to secure their future generations. Ryu remained cool and reassured Wani not to worry, insisting that everything would work out and that he should trust him. Ryu pointed his finger upwards, explaining that an old man with a pig on his head had come to him in a dream and predicted the rise of Bitcoin, which had led to profits. The same old man had also given him insights into which stocks would increase in value, further reinforcing his confidence in the stock market. Hearing this, Wani, still stressed, believed what Ryu told, saying to do as Ryu wished, but at least to keep some money in reserve just in case something happens. Ryu understood Wani's concern, but knew the future and believed that his investments would pay off. Now scrolling his phone, searching multiple companies, Ryu wanted to invest in the company named Heavenly Demon Consulting. This is a no-name company now, but in the future this will become the #1 in Korea and dominate everyone. Ryu purchased a 31% share of the company, ensuring that he would have some influence as it grew. Then a murmur broke Ryu's attention, and as he turned back, he saw Wani intensely praying to the old man with a pin in his head, saying, "Please make the company that Ryu is investing in grow." Seeing this, Ryu let out a joyful smile. Then, the night had arrived, and Ryu lay on his bed, eagerly anticipating this day. He opened the store window, revealing a list of various items. Among the options was one called Today's Item. Clicking this option allowed you to obtain a random item ranging from normal rank to high rank. To unlock this chest, you had to pay 4,600 gold. It might seem foolish to open a random chest at such a high price, risking getting a common rank item worth only a few gold. But Ryu knew the future. He had opened this chest 99 times, every other day, and he knew which item would appear. With confidence, he opened the random chest, and voila! Ryu received an epic item called the Skeleton Bone Necklace. It was an epic item with a unique effect. After defeating an opponent, it would increase the intelligence stat by 3 points and attack speed by 1. However, this effect would only last for 1 round, and it was capped at 25%. meaning Ryu could only increase his stats by a maximum of 25%. Ryu then used the 50% coupon he had obtained from a class-changing quest to purchase the necklace at half price, which amounted to 2,300 gold. Now Ryu was fully prepared for the next round. As time passed quickly, the day arrived, March 1st, 2023. Slowly but surely, one by one, the players started to appear on the third round of the dungeon. A dense and tense atmosphere enveloped the area as the players whispered among themselves, wondering what this place was. The players began to explore their surroundings, realizing that this place was once a village that now lay in ruin. They saw the remnants of what used to be a thriving village, but it had been reduced to rubble. A massive castle gate loomed over the village, surrounded by the remnants of a fortress. The atmosphere was thick with tension and uncertainty. Suddenly, a massive purple crystal materialized in the middle of the village, causing panic among the players. Anxiety filled the air, but Ryu, standing calmly in the background, didn't seem fazed. Then Ryu noticed the musclehead. Some players started to gossip while seeing the musclehead, saying the last round he became the zone leader by threatening everyone, and he literally started slaughtering whoever didn't obey his command. Some even started saying the musclehead is not worthy of becoming a zone leader, and Black Scythe should be the zone leader. Then one player, in panic, said to his friend not to say it so loudly, as if the musclehead heard him. He could use his authority skill on him and make his life miserable. But he, with an arrogant tone, replied that he doesn't care, as the musclehead can only use his skill 10 times, and after that, he is no more than an ordinary player. So what is there to be scared of? Now hearing this, the musclehead got furious and started shouting, calling them bastards. But the whispering didn't stop, and the players again started to make fun of the musclehead. Now the musclehead got furious. His blood started to boil, and he turned with great force, started shouting, asking who mother asterisk air just spoke. But everyone was just silent, and the musclehead couldn't do anything in this position. He started to grind his teeth in anger, thinking he knew this would happen, only if that bitch Angel didn't reveal everything related to his skill. Things would have been different, but then something funny happened. Well, you see, suddenly Youngman came and arrived on the scene with quite a dramatic entrance. He forcefully bowed his head before the musclehead, exclaiming a loud and cheerful, "Hello?" The musclehead was taken aback by this sudden display, and inquired about the newcomer's identity. Youngman, his voice tinged with submission, introduced himself as Youngman and respectfully addressed the musclehead as his senior. He explained that he had come to pay his respects to the musclehead. This response left the musclehead somewhat puzzled. He questioned whether he knew Youngman, to which Youngman replied that they were strangers. However, he confessed that his life's ambition was to become a gangster just like the musclehead, and that he was a massive fan. The musclehead couldn't help but be surprised by Youngman's unusual aspirations. He wondered, what kind of crazy guy dreams of becoming a gangster like me? Youngman went on to express his admiration for the musclehead, stating that he wished to join the musclehead's team. Before the musclehead could respond, Youngman just came to his knees and bowed his head, saying he will serve the musclehead for the rest of his life, and will do anything that the musclehead will say. And he requested, saying, "Please, I beg you, take me in." Now seeing this, the musclehead started to laugh, thinking he has seen all types of psychos in his life, but it is the first time he saw this type of psycho. However, before any further developments could occur, the other players began to threaten the musclehead, suggesting that they would gang up to eliminate him. Just then, the angel appeared with a loud laughter. Suddenly, a system notification popped up, saying that this time only 25% of players will survive. As in the previous round, no one died, and this round will be really fun. A terrifying atmosphere surrounded the place. So, the episode ends here. Write part 6 and give a red heart in the comment. Thanks for watching. This is the story of Ryu, the strongest hunter on Earth, who dies because he was a single virgin loser. In the previous episode, we saw how Ryu went on a lunch date with Juri and made a good friend with her. In return, she gave Ryu a rare purple crystal. Then Ryu ordered a Lamborghini and just spent the rest of the time with Wani, just chillin'. And how Youngman begged the musclehead that he wants to come inside. He wants to come under the musclehead's team. Then the musclehead extended his finger, pointing towards the gathered players, questioning whether something was wrong with Youngman's eyes. He remarked that everyone seemed to dislike Youngman, yet he wanted to join his team. Youngman, filled with excitement, clenched his fist and tapped his chest, wearing a wide smile. He made it clear that he doesn't care what other players think or say. He just wants to come inside the musclehead, and he can do anything to come inside the musclehead. Now the musclehead was hearing this with a serious face, and after a pause, the musclehead, with a grinning smile, replied that he likes people like Youngmin, so he would take Youngmin under him, take responsibility, and raise Youngmin. Hearing this, Youngmin was overwhelmed with gratitude, repeatedly bowing and expressing his thanks. It was truly an honor for him. Meanwhile, the other players couldn't help but gossip about the unexpected partnership. They found it hard to believe that Youngmin had teamed up with the musclehead, and some questioned Youngmin's sanity. However, as they observed the musclehead and Youngmin laughing and chatting happily, they couldn't resist making remarks. They suggested that there is a saying that birds of a feather flock together, so it's not weird seeing one piece of shit getting attracted toward another piece of shit. So today's like goal is 4,700. Please like and subscribe to support the channel. Now let's continue. Then out of nowhere, the angel descended from the sky with a dazzling entrance, startling all the players. She floated in the air for a moment, seemingly calculating something. She then announced that there were 90 fewer people than in the previous round. Hearing this, the players started to get confused, asking, "What does that mean?" But before they could say anything further, a quest window came in front of them, stating that their quest was to protect the purple crystal from being destroyed by monsters. Only 1,255 players would survive this round. Now, seeing that there were 90 fewer players than before, confusion and panic spread among the participants. The angel, still floating with her hand on her lips, politely explained that she couldn't go to the real world and kill anyone, as that would mean those players died in the real world for some reason. A player shouted in shock and panic, realizing that only 1,225 players would survive this time, which was 1/4 of the total players. As all the players slowly noticed it, they started to panic, and some started to scream. A player asked the angel, "Is there an error? In every round, only half of the players survive, so how?" But before he could finish his sentence, the angel burst into laughter. She started to laugh loudly while holding her stomach, her laughter echoing throughout the entire area. So there they were, the whole gang of players listening to that angel with their eyes wide in horror and panic. She fired back at him, calling them filthy monkeys and saying angels ain't no dummies. She made it clear there was no error in the rules. With a point of her finger and a cheerful tone, she dropped a bombshell on him. She reminded him that everyone had survived the last round, so it was only natural that only 1/4 of them would make it through this time. That sent the already freaked out players into an even deeper panic. The angel's look turned deadly serious as she laid out the quest details. In this village, there were 4 castle gates, and every 30 minutes, monsters would start pouring out of them. Their mission? Protect the purple crystal from getting wrecked by these beasties. There were going to be 4 waves of monsters, and if they couldn't keep that relic safe, they'd be hit with a big fat penalty. To make things a bit easier, she said they'd be ranking players based on the number of monsters they killed. That's how they'd figure out the top 25% who'd get to live. And just to sweeten the deal, she dropped the monster's power by 1/3. Now, there was this musclehead in the group, grinning like he had it all figured out. He thought this round would be a cakewalk. All he had to do was slaughter a bunch of monsters, and he even had that authority skill to back him up. Easy peasy, right? The angel clapped her hands, making sure she got everyone's attention, saying she almost forgot to say the most important thing. She stared at the musclehead and said that in the last round, Life is a documentary became the zone leader, right? So he can use the authority skill to command 10 people without any class. Then she questioned, did no one think about what will happen if the zone leader dies? And as soon as the musclehead heard this, he became like a statue without saying anything. Then the angel, with a wicked smile, explained that if the zone leader dies from a monster, or any natural cause, like if he killed himself or fell down on a dagger and died, the zone leader's position will remain empty, and they will have to vote again to decide who will become the next zone leader. But what if the zone leader got killed by another player? The musclehead was still frozen in his position in shock when the angel continued that if a player kills the zone leader, then the one who will kill him will automatically become the zone leader, and he can also use 10 authority commands regardless of what the previous zone leader had used. As soon as she said this, all the players turned their gaze toward the musclehead with a deadly look, like they would eat the musclehead alive. Then the angel clapped her hands again, saying the monsters will appear in 10 minutes, and she hopes everyone will work together and survive. But then she smiled, looking like she was too happy, enjoying the moment and glaring at the musclehead, saying that she hopes everyone works together, but she is not sure if he will be able to. With those last words, she vanished, leaving the musclehead shaking in anger. Then the musclehead started to scream in anger, cursing the angel and calling her a bitch. However, a whisper caught his attention, and when he turned around, he noticed the players were ready with their weapon, ready to attack. Seeing this, the musclehead also took out his dagger in anger and started to shout, saying if they want to die this badly, they can come and he will fulfill their wishes. But the players didn't back down, explaining that the musclehead could only use his authority 10 times, and if they all attacked him together, he wouldn't be able to defend himself. Just when tensions were escalating, an unexpected turn of events occurred. A heavy, commanding footstep echoed, drawing everyone's attention. It was none other than Ryu, who walked past the players with a majestic aura. They made way for him as he approached the musclehead. Noticing Ryu coming toward the musclehead, he started to panic and asked, "Why is Ryu coming close toward me?" But Ryu didn't say anything, and he just walked close to the musclehead, and with a chilling cold tone said, "Don't be afraid. I'm not here to kill you. If I wanted to kill you, you wouldn't be alive in the first place. I'm here to say something to you." The musclehead just stood there with a sweaty face. Then the musclehead, still scared but not showing it to everyone, replied that he's not scared at all and he's listening, so Ryu can say whatever he wants. With a touch of arrogance, the musclehead added that although Ryu was strong, if they were to fight, he would make sure to at least chop off one or both of Ryu's hands. He declared that he wasn't scared of Ryu's threats. However, before he could finish his sentence, Ryu began to smile wickedly. This sent shivers down the musclehead's spine. Then Ryu, with a cold expression and a cool pose, hand in his pocket and the other holding his black scythe, suggested that the musclehead seemed to be in a tight spot. He proposed an offer. How about he protect the musclehead? The musclehead was left utterly bewildered and stood there in confusion as Ryu explained that he will stand behind the mushhead and protect his ass so that no one can fuck his ass up. Now hearing this, all the players got shocked, saying, "Why is Black Scythe protecting the musclehead? So if they want to kill the musclehead, they have to fight Black Scythe too. And if it is, they will not be able to face 2 strong opponents." This declaration sent shockwaves through all the players. They couldn't understand why Black Scythe, Ryu, would protect the musclehead ass. They realized that if they wanted to kill the musclehead, they'd have to face off against Black Scythe too, and it's impossible to fight against Black Scythe. Meanwhile, the musclehead was listening to the whispers, thinking that just the name of Black Scythe was enough to strike fear into the players. With a somewhat unsure and cautious tone, the musclehead asked what Black Scythe wanted in return for his protection. Ryu, always cool and collected, casually replied that he didn't want much. Then, his expression turned serious as he stated that the only condition was for the musclehead to follow his orders. This condition seemed to take the musclehead by surprise, as he realized that Black Scythe was essentially offering him a subordinate role. Curious and cautious, the musclehead inquired why Black Scythe was making such a kind offer. Ryu cryptically replied that he couldn't tell him. When the musclehead asked about the nature of the orders he'd have to follow, Ryu gave a similar response, saying he couldn't reveal that either. He advised the musclehead not to talk too much and simply follow his commands. He doesn't have the entire day here. The musclehead found himself in deep thought. He didn't want to become Black Scythe's subordinate, but he feared what might happen if he rejected the offer. Would Black Scythe come after him? In a state of panic, he nervously gulped, feeling the pressure of the decision weighing on him. Ryu urged him to give his response quickly, as the other players were eagerly waiting for his answer. Hesitantly, the musclehead declined Black Scythe's offer, stating that he wouldn't come under his command. Ryu fixed him with a cold, deadly look, and the other players started to get happy, saying, "Is the musclehead dumb?" If he had accepted the offer, Ryu would have protected his ass, but no. Because of his ego, he rejected the offer. The atmosphere grew tense as a girl prepared her long sword and her friend readied his spear. Slowly, everyone geared up to attack the musclehead. Ryu, on the other hand, distanced himself from the scene, stating that he no longer cared about what happened to the musclehead. Whether he lived or died was none of his concern. Just as the players were about to make their move, the system sent out a notification. The first wave of monsters would arrive in a minute, catching everyone off guard. Their priorities shifted instantly, and protecting the crystal became their top concern. The players abandoned the idea of attacking the musclehead. Seeing an opportunity, the musclehead decided to follow Ryu, thinking that whatever Ryu was up to might be a better option. As he trailed Ryu, he noticed that Ryu was heading toward the 3rd castle entrance. which was unguarded. Suddenly, a loud sound signaled the start of the first wave of monsters, startling everyone. Slowly, the massive castle gates began to creak open, and a chilling wind swept through, making everyone shiver. The system then delivered a grim notification. 9,800 weakened goblins were approaching, intent on destroying the crystal. Panic and fear washed over the players as they stood, clutching their weapons tightly. With creepy smiles and eerie noises, the bloodthirsty goblin horde emerged from behind the gates. They looked as if they hadn't eaten in 1,000 years, their hungry eyes fixed on the defenseless players. Even the musclehead got panicked as he himself didn't expect 9,800 goblins to come. Without wasting any time, the musclehead started to run, finding a hiding position and started thinking, why isn't Black Scythe running? Is he planning to fight against all the goblins alone? Then the musclehead started climbing a staircase, trying to go to a higher ground, saying, even if it's Black Scythe, he will not be able to face against thousands of goblins at a time. As the musclehead reached the top of the building, he noticed hundreds of goblins marching toward Ryu, and Ryu just standing there. He said, now Ryu will run with his tail between his legs, and this scene will be a sight to see. Then the horde of bloodthirsty goblins dashed toward Ryu, screaming, and Ryu prepared his black scythe. A group of goblins jumped toward Ryu, and Ryu, as cool as ever without breaking a sweat, in a flash, chopped all the goblins. He didn't stop there. Like a killing machine, he continued to chop each and every goblin into small pieces with great force, displaying tremendous strength and precision. The musclehead, on the other hand, was left speechless. Seeing this, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Then he thought, as Ryu got a class, that's why he must be so strong. After he obtains his class, then he will beat the crap out of that arrogant bastard. With that, the musclehead left to kill some goblins to level up and obtain a class. He also started to kill a single goblin at a time without any issue, thinking that in no time, he will obtain a class. Suddenly, an arrow whizzed through the air, narrowly missing the musclehead's face. He managed to dodge most of it, but the arrow grazed a small part of his ear. Angrily, he began searching for the person responsible, but in the chaotic crowd of players, it was impossible to identify the shooter. Fuming with rage, the musclehead declared that he didn't know who had attacked him, but once he found the culprit, he would peel his skin off. Before he could finish his sentence, he felt a piercing pain. As he looked back, the spear guy had already thrust his spear into the musclehead's stomach. The musclehead was really angry, so he grabbed the spear stuck in his stomach and with his dagger thrust it into the spear guy, killing him instantly. However, that was just the beginning. One by one, other players began to attack him, and he found himself desperately defending against their relentless onslaught. Even if he managed to survive this battle, he hadn't killed enough monsters to avoid automatic death when the round ended. Amidst the chaos, he spotted a barbarian-like player, Black Flame Dragon, ranked 3rd in the zone. With a cunning grin, the musclehead used his command skill on him, instructing him to protect him at all costs. Meanwhile, Ryu was doing his favorite thing, yes, bullying the goblins. At this point, Ryu had slaughtered 502 goblins, and all his stats had increased by 100% because of the rain of slaughter. And because of the skeleton bone necklace, his stats further increased by 25%. On the other hand, the other players were barely defending themselves against the goblin, and finally, after a hellish battle, the first round got over, and 3,933 players were left, while 936 players died in this time. Then, Ryu slowly approached the battlefield where dead bodies of players could be seen. He was searching for the musclehead, wondering if he was still alive. On the other hand, the musclehead was heavily injured, but his suffering was far from over. With the players no longer distracted by the goblins, they started to attack the musclehead. One player bravely attacked him, but his attempt was swiftly crushed by the combined might of the barbarian guy and Youngmin. Seeing this, the musclehead was thankful that he had those bastards to protect him because of the authority of command. He managed to survive the first round. Then, Youngmin asked the musclehead in concern if he's okay, and seeing that the musclehead was in deep thought, Youngmin followed him even though he did not use command authority on him. But then, he started groaning in pain as the wound in his stomach was too deep, and he was bleeding heavily. However, before he could even take a sigh of relief, the second wave of goblins began to surge towards them. The goblins started running towards Black Scythe, Ryu. With a serious expression, he did not hesitate to slice the goblins with his scythe. He continued to attack multiple goblins at the same time. The bodies of the dead goblins were piling up on the ground. Then the system notified him that he had reached level 20. His rank had risen from apprentice to regular. He could now use the combination function. He wiped his sweat as he rejoiced in reaching level 20, saying that now he could use the combination function to create unique items that can't be obtained in the store. Then, another window screen appeared before him, displaying important information. The first announcement was about the strengthening of the death seal due to his rank increase, now boosted from 100 to 120%. Additionally, he had unlocked a Reaper-exclusive skill called Night of Death, which could create an artificial night within a 500-meter radius. Combining this skill with his Grim Reaper's abilities would double his attack power and increase his attack speed by 50% during the night. This was indeed a formidable combination. After quickly reviewing the screen, the goblins came charging towards him, driven by their bloodthirsty instinct. He welcomed their approach with a confident smile, eager to put his new skill to the test. With a swift activation, Night of Death shrouded the area in impenetrable darkness. The goblins, unable to see through this pitch-black veil, were disoriented and panicked. In the midst of this darkness, Ryu became a reaper of death, precision, and swiftness personified. He systematically beheaded the goblins, causing chaos among their ranks. Their panic escalated as they tried to flee, but in a single sweeping motion of his scythe, Ryu carved through them like a hot knife through butter. When he turned around, a gruesome pile of goblin corpses bore witness to his deadly efficiency. The system chimed in to announce the end of the second wave, giving Ryu a moment of respite. Seizing the opportunity, he opened his in-game shop. Eager to spend the gold he had earned from his goblin-slaying spree, he invested in the precise location skill, which granted him the ability to sense every particle within a 30-meter radius. With this newfound skill, he was well prepared for the arrival of the third wave of goblins. As the third wave approached, Ryu remained unfazed. With eyes closed, he moved effortlessly through the goblins, slicing them down as if he were casually sipping his morning coffee. Meanwhile, the musclehead found himself in a dire situation, forced to fend off the goblins while protecting himself despite his severe injuries. The musclehead had been intensely focused on the front, engrossed in the battle before him. However, a sudden eruption of screams from behind shattered his concentration. When he turned around, a horrifying sight awaited him. His subordinates were being mercilessly slaughtered, and a group of aggressive players was advancing, determined to end his life. Arrows rained down upon him, and in a desperate bid to shield himself, he grabbed two of his subordinates and used them as human shields, blocking the deadly projectiles. Now only he and 3 others were left, facing a larger group of players ready to kill them. Realizing that he couldn't win this battle, the musclehead made a quick decision to flee. He started running from the scene, with the players hot on his heels. His only goal was to survive for 1 more hour. If he could do that, he would make it to the next round, as he was already among the top 25%. However, the relentless players chasing him had other plans, and they were determined not to let him live. In his desperate flight, the musclehead encountered Ryu up ahead. Panic overcame him, and he rushed toward Ryu, offering to accept any deal Ryu proposed. He was ready to do anything, from licking Ryu's feet to killing anyone for him. But Ryu merely glared at the musclehead with a cold, deadly look, and firmly stated that he refused to accept the musclehead. As shock registered on the musclehead's face, Ryu went on to explain that he had already made it clear earlier that he didn't care whether the musclehead lived or died. It was none of his business. As Ryu prepared for another round of bullying the goblins, the musclehead couldn't contain his desperation any longer. He started screaming, begging Ryu to save him. In response, Ryu calmly stated that he would have considered taking the musclehead under his wing if he hadn't already used all his authority skill charges. But now, in Ryu's eyes, the musclehead was nothing more than trash. Hearing this, the musclehead felt a surge of frustration and helplessness, not knowing what to do. Meanwhile, the other players behind them began to laugh gleefully, relieved that Black Scythe hadn't intervened to save the musclehead. In a fit of intense rage and determination, the musclehead drew his dagger, clutching his wounded stomach with his other hand. He screamed, vowing to take at least 10 people down with him before he met his end. However, at that moment, Youngman appeared from behind, and in a concerned tone, assured the musclehead that he was there to help. Seeing Youngman, the musclehead's face lit up with happiness and he gave a wide smile. He expressed his confidence that Youngman would come to his rescue and promised to reward him generously once he survived this round. But before he could finish his sentence, Youngman swiftly lunged towards him and delivered a powerful punch, sending the musclehead flying backward. Youngman, with a wicked smile, taunted the musclehead, saying, "Don't worry, I'll give you a painless death, ha 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 ha." So the episode ends here. Write part 7 and rip Musclehead in the comments. See you all in the next episode. Goodbye.